who been calling me passionately that I am late, despite the fact that we are starting 45 minutes early.
That's right.
Well, hey, Joseph.
How do?
Bonjour. Dobra utra.
Bonjour, mon ami.
Dzień dobry. No, that's wrong. That's morning. It's evening in Poland. I haven't figured out how to say good evening in Polish yet, but we'll get there. Okay. I can't say good night in Ukrainian either. So.
Oh, don't go there, please.
Well, we live in an interesting time in an interesting world. Do
you
not?
Think?
Yeah. I thought I saw the horsemen of the apocalypse overtake me here on the freeway coming back home. Then it turned into it was just a Prius and a couple of Teslas with vegetarian stickers.
Oh, no.
So I was right.
Yes, you were right.
I do not understand how Tesla went in the footprint of Toyota by only selling their cars to people who absolutely, positively cannot drive. What kind of sales policy is this?
Oh, don't get me started on this nonsense. I mean...
Well, why not?
They're running out of lithium, and they're going to have to dramatically expand the power grid to make all of this work, and it's going to cost more. It's going to be more environmentally unsound than the current fossil fuels, which incidentally aren't fossil fuels, because if you do a little chemistry and go look up the Fischer-Tropsch process in Germany prior to World War II, you won't find a hydrocarbon in that synthetic oil. So, please.
Are you saying my car is not driving on old compressed dinosaur bones?
No, it's not.
That would have explained my driving, though.
I don't want to know.
Well, yeah. I know it's. I will say if you want to talk eco nutters and you don't want to talk nuclear, there's no conversation to be had. If you don't want to start building, I mean, even the French are building little nuclear plants the size of a container, just sitting in little cities behind things. And of course, they have to build more nuclear power plants in France because the Germans are closing theirs.
And now apparently reopening coal plants. So I mean,
yes. Well, they have to compete with the third world nation of China, who's getting all those rebates.
Oh yeah.
Yes, the poor underdeveloped Chinese nation that we need to.
Underdeveloped Chinese. Yeah, right.
They only have half of the nuclear weapons we do, Joseph. They're underdeveloped.
Oh, they have less than that. I mean, I think I saw an estimate of about 300 warheads, but 300, 3,000. What's a few megatons? But anyway.
Well, I mean, I figure if we're not going to be turned into glass by the next nuclear regulatory commission here in America, who's domed kleptomaniac, bold lipstick wearing, then I was showing my friends in Europe who Biden put in charge of our nuclear waste, and they all stare at me in disbelief. Apparently, this doesn't make the news out there. This is like, oh my God, are you kidding me?
I bet that went over well.
In Eastern Europe, that they don't find that funny.
No, gee, I wonder why.
They still think we're great people and we're wonderful for supporting them and we got our shit together.
We are great people. We are great people.
We are great people.
The problem is the clowns in charge of our so-called government. They're not great people. They are both evil and insane and stupid, which is a very deadly combination. And we
can throw in a little treacherous as well for the majority.
Well, that too. I mean, when they rise to the level of having a thought, yes.
I mean, you speak so ill of the cultural Marxist revolutionaries in Washington.
Oh my!
Which is actually it's an interesting term that I believe it or not, I heard it from an interview with a Russian soldier. Because I'm trying to listen to both sides of this little war we've got going. And it was a very interesting term. I thought cultural Marxist revolutionaries that are trying to take over the West was, I quote what he said. And I thought that's an interesting term because that's actually not wrong.
That's right. the Russians went through this, so
Yes, they did.
they ought to know when they see it what's going on, and it just Tino, it just amazes me. We've had Dmitry Medvedev, the deputy chairman of the Russian Federation Security Council, warning for months that Russia was going to have to consider several steps of horizontal escalation if the West keeps doing this. And this sailed right over everybody's head in Swampington, D.C., because again, they're out on the beach with their tranny friends and purple hair. Who knows? But it went over everybody's head, and no one paid attention to what he said. And what he said in the way I heard him was that all of you leaders in the West have to understand you are targets. And everybody took that in the sense of, oh, the Russians are threatening nuclear war, they're going to drop the big one on Manhattan. No, I think what Medvedev was telling them was, two people can play the drone assassination game. And we've got drones too, and we've got global positioning satellites too. So,
Now, this is the interesting thing about that, because
I've already sent him my list of people. So
I was just thinking, if considering, and I think we have to be very honest with the Western governments now are led by the least qualified, most uneducated, closest to diehard Marxist nut jobs as we have ever seen in the West. I mean, the Cold War was navigated through with fairly intelligent people. Before the World Wars, 100 years ago, we had intelligent people with statecraft who knew what they were doing. Now we have nut job kleptomaniacs who are stealing luggage in the airports, who have no idea about anything in charge. No. So if the Russians, in their infinite wisdom, decides to start taking these people out, of course, not recommending this, if they do, I'm not sure that will be detrimental to the way of life in the Western countries.
Like I said,
is that what they want?
I've already sent Mr. Medvedev my suggestions, of people to put on the hit list. Back in the old days, they called that wet works. So now they just call it a wish list. But
it's interesting because I was thinking about it as I was driving by the gas station, looking at now gas is $5.79 here. And for the past, since the new administration have come in, the food I buy, the inflation is not 20%. It is 3 times the price of what it was 3 years ago. Now, if we go 100 years back in time, and I don't know if this is caused by mass propaganda or the medicine or the testosterone and plastic and water, but something have made people incredibly dumb and docile. Because 100 years ago, if you upped people's living price by 300 times, well, 300% in a matter of 6 months, they would be out with pitchforks rioting. Why are people sitting around the Western world, including America, taking this?
Tino, I have no idea. I cannot figure this out. I'll put it this way to you. I think, in all honesty, that at some point something is going to blow. This country has, as far as I can tell, we have 2 courses of action open to us: absolute tyranny, which is going to collapse. Forget about a Soviet Union run of 70 years; it won't last that long, because these people are too stupid and too incompetent to run anything that complicated. The other possibility is it's just going to crack up. I just don't see any other way forward. And if it goes down that path, there's going to be a triggering event. You know it, and I know it. I don't know what form or fashion it's going to take shape, but. And once that starts, either way, once that starts, the reaction of the rest of the world is going to be very interesting. I for one, simply do not see and cannot conceive Europe staying within the American NATO tent. I just don't see that happening. Um, I think it'll start to unravel in Eastern Europe, and it'll spread westward.
I mean, for now, I can tell from just having been there
Yeah.
is somewhat of a solidification in Europe because of the Ukraine war. You
Yeah.
have far more Western troops that are training in Poland along the borders. You have more joint maneuvers, and you have a little bit of a common sense of, even on the German part, believe it or not, something that almost resembles slight, urgency. The Germans in the bureaucrats lost the German Second World War. Bureaucrats have destroyed the German country as today, and they spent 10 years trying to pick the new helmet for the military that they still haven't found. And Lord, I mean, helmets are hard.
Go back to the coal scuttle, guys.
I know. So,
what do you think our helmet's modeled on, for crying out loud?
I mean, it's not like there's no helmets to pick from. I mean,
I know.
That are tested and tried. But
well, I was going to ask you.
Yes.
This raises an interesting question, because I'm watching this. I can't call it a war. This is more like a regional scale Verdun on steroids, with the Ukrainians being the French. Okay. The way I'm looking at this war, from what I can tell, is that the NATO allies have prepped the Ukrainian military to fight exactly the wrong war.
Okay.
I mean, the Russians have their space assets and are just sitting back and picking all this stuff off, and using their long range bombardment capabilities to the nth degree. And we're trying to fight, September 1939 all over again, and it's not working. That's my impression. But this is the other problem. The impressions that we're getting from our media are so contrived,
yes,
and controlled, that it could be a completely false impression. So what's your impression?
Right.
Are they training for the wrong war?
The Ukrainians are certainly not anymore. And I will, from having now been there, I spent some time there. I spent some time with the military there, and we traveled around Kiev. We followed the advanced lines back to Belarus and up to Russia on the other side, Chernihiv, and it would be really hard for me to not say this is a real war, because when you go through bombed out cities, graves, tanks lining, burned out tanks, trucks, wrecks of planes everywhere you go still, and people are dying. And one thing that really, and I'll go back, one thing that really bothered me is I went in thinking, oh, come on, now we can go by the reasons why this happened, and I think we're probably agreeing on why this happened, but just looking at the fact that what is going on right now, you have an actual war. The attack on Kiev was a coup de main, and the Russians were behaving, and they are behaving, from what I can see from statements from Russian soldiers and prisoners, and they are behaving just the same as they did during the Second World War. And that really bothered me, because I thought the Russians would have evolved as a more civilized army. But and it's not all of them. It's not all Russians are doing this.
Right,
quite a lot of Russian soldiers really don't want to be there. But some of their elite units have shot prisoners with their hands tied behind the head. They've killed civilians, and you have all on video. All of it is in video. And when they said, "Oh, that's just a propaganda," that really bothers me, because you have video of tanks swinging against small vehicles, blowing women and children away, outright killing people, point blank fire. I get the collateral damage of shelling a town with artillery because you think the enemy's there. I get that, but you have enough video. That's the interesting thing about dissecting this war. You have everything on video, and you have everything on drones and CCT cameras. You have the names of the people who did it, because dumb folks that did it, after they shot some of the soldiers in the back of the head, they took their cell phones and called mommy at home. So we know exactly the names of the soldiers who did the things. The problem with that is then going to, now that became the calling cry, a Bucha, for Ukrainian soldiers. Let's see what the Russians are going to do. That will, and now, of course, Ukrainian soldiers, some are going to go do the same thing. Then the Russians do that, and they're going to do the same thing. And now we have the Eastern Front all over again. Right. And that's, I'm trying to, it's really hard because the Ukrainians were training since 2014, and Lord knows 2014 was an event that was very much instigated by the State Department.
Of course.
Yeah. We can't really run away from that because they've been bragging about it.
Yeah,
fine.
Of course.
Then the Ukrainian military started training with us, and they probably started training for the most part on some of our weapons or some of our tactics for an insurgency localized fight in down in the east. In the two oblasts that the Russians initially annexed, and the DNR and LNR, and that's still going on. But now, after the actual invasion, it seemed that people woke up. Now the Ukrainians the Russians telegraphed this, just like the German telegraphed to the Russians in 1941 that, oh, we're building up, but no, just a maneuver. And Stalin, like the same thing. The Russians, oh, we're building up, just a maneuver. Ukrainians didn't buy it any more than back then, so they had dispersed. But the Russians, they issued them maps that was 20, 30 years old. They gave them fuel and munitions for 3 days. Before 3 days before the invasion, the Russian Bank of Moscow, the Bank of Moscow, sent huge pallet of cash to the Bank of Moscow in Kiev to pay the soldiers when they got there. They were planning on a 3-day done deal. Roll in, the government will run away. We'll be greeted as liberators. That is generally what they thought. That's why they came down that one road. There's no way to do a proper encirclement. And then it was a surprise to a lot of the Russian soldiers that, lo and behold, the Ukrainians really didn't want to be liberated by the Russians any more than they didn't want to be liberated by the Russians in 1920 or in 45. It was a little bit of a give and take. But after what the Russians did to the Ukrainians in 32, 33.
Right. Most Americans don't even know that history.
No. The Russians have starved almost a third of the Ukrainian population to death deliberately.
Yeah.
And Stalin was so offended because he said, well, they're just traitors for dying. They're doing it deliberately to undermine Soviet Union. Stalin said that. And he's the one that's taking their seed grain.
Of course.
That still lives in my memory today. You still meet people who just barely survived this, and very old people.
Yeah.
And you see a resolve, and no matter how you twist and turn it, you see the Russians say, well, Ukraine was traditionally, I see Russian soldiers say, well, Ukraine is traditionally Russian. They're just occupied now by an insurgent, by a runaway government, just like Latvia and Moldova. And I'm like, okay, now, Ivan, calm down now, because if you want to go by, well, once they belong to Russia argument, then they always should belong to Russia. Well, by that definition, my family's Prussian. I would like Prussia back. So do you think they're going to give up Kaliningrad? Norway and Sweden used to belong to Denmark.
Let's go all the way back to the Mongols.
I mean, exactly. I mean, where are you going to draw the line? So in Ukraine, well, hey, Russia accepted your borders in 91. And whatever happened after then, that was sort of where the borders were. You can't, and they really don't want to be Russian. And you see them.
No, they don't.
It's interesting when you go through Ukraine, you see EU flags everywhere, which I thought, well, you're not quite there yet. But there's been an enormous influx of money and investment from EU countries in Ukraine in the past 5-10 years. And you feel that this is also EU's investment. It's not just for money laundering for the two American parties, because Lord knows they've both been laundering money through Ukraine for the past decade.
You think?
I don't know. It's a hunch. And do you know why I think? Because the gangsters in Ukraine told me so. And if
they would know.
When I talk to the criminal gun runners that I may have spoken to, and they tell me that, the Democrats, the Republicans, they all launder money here for the last 10 years. Oh, no problem. It would go like, so there's an interest
Yeah.
in keeping the party alive. And I'm going like, oh, holy crap. But the EU, I think, have more of a genuine interest in trying to keep this from escalating because, well, the Poles are really. Have you seen the last procurement of military order from Poland?
No.
So
are we going back to Marshall Pilsudski here by any chance?
Yes.
That's what I thought. Okay.
The Polish, and I'm just memory comes. They have just put in an order for 1,000 Korean main battle tanks, 800 to be built in Poland, 1,600 self-propelled artillery systems, 500 HIMARS systems, F-35 jet fighters, and some 300 Korean ground attack aircraft, and attack helicopters and everything else. Because in Poland, they have decided that, you know what, you did it first time, we were in the middle. You settled second time in the middle. This time, everyone over 21 gets own tank. And you point east. They're not going to get, like, the Polish have just decided, we're not doing this again. No more settling scores in Poland. We'll stop them on the border. They're very motivated. And I thought it was really interesting.
Well, understandably.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, there's a past. There's some history here.
Yeah, exactly. This is my problem with this whole thing, is there's so much history there, and Americans simply don't know it, and we don't know what we're getting into, quite frankly.
No.
And as far as I'm concerned, Victoria Nuland and her crew at the State Department that are responsible for this mess, she doesn't know what she's playing around with.
No.
I mean, this goes way back to, if not far beyond, the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. And nothing is going to be sorted out.
Don't worry, I'll get to Bandera. I'll get to him. No, sorry, I just saw a chat. We'll get to Bandera. Don't you worry. Don't you worry.
I tried to point this out, Tino, way back in my book, The Third Way, before this war even got started, by pointing out the similarity of the current boundaries in Eastern Europe and particularly the Ukraine to the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk and what Austria-Hungary and Imperial Germany carved out of European Russia. I mean, it's classic. This is an old game, and everyone has been playing it for a long time, and we're the newcomers, and we don't know the game. We don't know the history. Most Americans are not even familiar with the fact that Nikita Khrushchev was known as the Butcher of Kiev. Yeah. And, why, folks?
I mean, being liberated by the Russians were not always exactly all it sounds like it would be cracked up to be.
Well, yeah, ask Eastern Europe.
It's like ask everybody. But okay, somebody mentioned Bandera, who was a famous Ukrainian freedom fighter from the point of view of the Ukrainians.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. He fought for Ukrainian independence. Unfortunately, one of the things he also did was he killed a whole bunch of Polish people and eradicated a bunch of villages.
Yep.
One man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist. That's fine. And when you see Ukrainians who fled to Poland, by the way, thank you. When you see Ukrainians who have fled to Poland put up pictures of Bandera in their new restaurants, I will say that is probably in a little bit bad taste. Because the Poles have spent up to 1% of their GNP to feed all the Ukrainians who fled there. They're taking good care of the Ukrainians, rubbing in somebody who actually killed a whole bunch of Poles. It's not a concerted effort. It's just I saw it at a couple of Ukrainian restaurants. I saw the picture of it and go like, probably a little tact here would be good. This is also a time for Ukrainian patriotism and nationalism. Obviously, everybody throw around nationalism as if it's a bad thing to be patriotic to your country. And this is the problem we have in the Ukraine, is you have proud Ukrainian patriots and proud Russian patriots who have, because of where they both come from, now they are at odds. This is a war that should never have happened. This should never have happened.
I agree. Absolutely.
And now we're stuck with it.
Which leads me to another question that I wanted to ask you, since you just returned from there. And maybe you heard or got some impression, or maybe you didn't. But where is Hungary in all of this? Because, as you know, there's that little region of the Ciscarpathia that has been back and forth for a long time. So I have to wonder what Orban and what they're thinking in Budapest.
Well, they're sort of, well, you know.
Well, you know.
Hungary is a little bit unpopular with the Poles right now, because there's actually a thought about the British and the Polish and the Hungarians would get together in a trade nation type deal, and before this, and then the Hungarians are a little too nice to the Russians. They're getting a lot of their oil and gas and fuel from there. They're trying to paddle down the middle from what I have seen, to what I'm hearing. The Hungarians are trying to stay as neutral as you sort of can. However, you will see Hungarian munitions show up on the Ukrainian battlefield.
Oh,
just a little bit. They don't just a little bit of stuff here. You see a lot of stuff show up on the Ukrainian battlefields with different countries' languages stamped on it, but they don't telegraph it like we do, because we have the idiot. I mean, we're back to statecraft. If you're going to support someone, you don't necessarily want to publish it in the New York Times, on CNN, every barrel you send. Just send it.
Oh, listen, Tino, I was livid watching the media in this country constantly talking about the Ukrainian counteroffensive that's coming any minute now. I'm like, folks, will you guys just shut up?
Yeah.
And let the Ukrainians launch their offensive when they want to.
Yes, because this is the problem, having a war that's fought on press bites from everybody.
Yes.
It's like, oh no, we'll get more aid if it looks like we're doing something. But the Ukrainian military are not idiots. No, they're not going to go charging into a minefield surrounded by backed up by artillery within missile range.
Unless we tell them to, you know.
You know what? God. I actually don't think we are. They are.
No, because I agree with you.
I know what you mean. I know that the CNN really wants the headline. I know. Like it sounds much better for call me Biden to say that, oh, you know, we're sending them all this money. They're doing something with it. They are doing something with it, but they're doing it very slowly. And what you're looking at right now is you're looking at World War I trenches, bunkers with drones and rockets, and
that's
all the
exactly
military
what I think is going on. Yes,
that is exactly what's going on. Yeah. There's always a chance that Russia will try another advance towards Kiev. There's always a chance of this or that. But right now, this is where it's going to be for a while. Well, and I don't see this changing. I don't think that this was not the plan. And Putin have fired quite a bit of intelligence people and quite a bit of generals for the intel he got that this was going to be over in 3 days. And it's not over in 3 days. And I think maybe he would want to go back. And for that, we just have to talk about Wagner. We have to talk about Prigozhin.
Before we talk about Yevgeny, let's go back to Poland for a minute.
Yes.
Because there's something that you said that I think people need to latch on to. And I really hope, you know, Tino, I'm just amazed that anybody in Kiev would listen to this administration in Swampington, D.C., and take them seriously. The United States, unfortunately, is not the manufacturing power that you want to have on your side when you're fighting Russia. It just doesn't work, folks. You know, we hear all of this business about Russia's economy, you know, being number 8 in the G7 and not that big. But the reality is America's economy is a financial economy. It's based on stock options, bonds, and pieces of paper. In Russia, they actually make things, and they are capable of doing so on a mass scale. And you said something very interesting to me about Poland, and that was they're getting artillery systems and tanks from South Korea.
Yes.
Not from Germany, not from France, not from the United States, and God bless them, not from the British, who can't make a tank worth anything anyway. That says a lot right there.
Well,
And
actually,
for the United States to be thinking that it's going to be the big backer of a war 9,000 miles away with all the supply lines already
well,
stretched to it's just nonsense.
let me explain to you why they are being so nice to America. It's very interesting. Also, by the way, the Poles are also buying Abrams. They're also buying Leopard 2s, but they're being very smart because the artillery systems and the tanks from South Korea, and the South Koreans, they have a pretty good idea about how to make things because they
Yes.
have people next door who doesn't like them.
Yes.
But they're going to be built. They're getting the proprietary technology and they're building them in Poland.
Yes.
So now South Korea and Poles are going to build tanks and artillery systems in Poland, which they could sell cheaper than Rheinmetall probably. So they're being smart on several levels. Okay, when I crossed the border, as you know, I have a couple of different passports, and no, I'm not a spy.
The Poles would not want to rely on Rheinmetall anyway. They've been down that road before too. Anyway, I just thought I'd add that.
Well, I mean, last time Rheinmetall went to Poland, anyway.
Poland, yes. They weren't there to sell them things, but anyway, go ahead. I remember those Carl mortars being parked outside of Warsaw, blasting things to pieces.
Right.
But anyway,
I mean, God bless the Polish. They are not going to play ball this time.
Who can blame them?
I know. And I actually spend a lot of time looking at Polish fortifications and bunkers and things, and I have gotten to the point where I like Poland to the point where I'm actually looking for a little summer house out there.
Oh, wow.
Because they're nice, normal, conservative, traditional values, cheap food. You get 4 times for the dollar.
And they don't have purple hair. And they know which bathroom.
They don't. I know. It's funny. They really don't. And oh, by the way, the State Department is really mad at the Poles for not waving that flag. And the same thing with the Ukrainians, because they're really not on board with that either. They're very religious people all the way towards the east. They don't play this.
Yes, I know.
Yeah. So anyway, when I went, my first thought, and this is now, I love my country. I'm an American patriot. That's what all my T-shirts say anyway. And I feel that this situation was escalated by American foreign policy, possibly NATO expansion, pushing. This could have been avoided. Smart people could have avoided this 10 waves some Sunday.
Absolutely.
What NATO and the U.S. did was give Putin the reasons he needed to give his people to do what he wanted to do.
Right.
So now we have a war.
Right.
Fine. So when I went to Ukraine, I have a couple of passports. I went in on the other one because, and I took my American flag. I got press credentials from the Ukrainian military. I have my press ID from here. Because I want to make sure everything's on the up and up. I'm going to run around the front lines. We're going to run around with soldiers, going to cross checkpoints with a camera. I don't want there be any ambiguity as to why. It's a war zone. So, but I took my American flag on my jacket and I'm like, okay. I was not going to be the loud American in the room. Took all my American flag T-shirts and put them in the back and bottom of the bag and had my 2 duffel bags. And it was hilarious because, so I cross the border, no problem. I went to speak at a conference in Ivano-Frankivsk. That airport was bombed. That's in Western Poland. I was when Lviv, which you would love Lviv. It's gorgeous, built by the Austro-Hungarians.
Yes.
Oh, gorgeous town.
Lemberg.
Yes, Lemberg. As I refer to it through the Ukrainians, through the raised eyebrow. And then I went up to Kiev. And the funny thing that always happened is that when I was alone, just traveling, of course, I go through the checkpoints and I have my 2 green bags. And I don't know if you haven't, exactly seen my centerfold pictures, but I work out and I have short hair. And I got this 5 times, 5 checkpoints from different people in a train command. They always said the same thing. I gave, here's my passport and my ID. And they're like, so are you military? Like, no, I'm just, I'm reserve, but I'm just here for a conference. I'm a historian. Are you agency? No, really. I'm just here as a reporter. You don't look like a reporter. And I look at my passport. Oh, new passport. And it was done with a grin every single time because none of them believed me. None of them. It's like, looked up, oh, military bags, you have weapons? No, cameras. And then they walked on with a grinning every time. And I'm like, no, really, if I was agency, I wouldn't look like I was agency in a movie. I got to Kiev, and I hooked up with the military, and we had an interpreter, because it's interesting. Some places they speak fairly well English. The young generation does. Some of them over 30 doesn't, really bad. So, and even the interpreter was, oh, we love America. We're so glad you do so much for us. We love America and your freedoms and your system. And I'm like, stop, you're hurting me right now. What freedoms? Oh, your freedoms. The freedom of speech and freedom of, I said, well, listen, let me ask her. And I asked my interpreter, I said, well, if you really disagreed with Zelensky and you went online or you stood up at a town hall meeting or something and you told everybody you hated him, he was an idiot, whatever you wanted to say negative about him, could you do that? She was like, yes, of course. I said, well, if I did that in America towards our current administration, I would probably lose my job and get kicked out of the military. Yeah. So the freedom you talk about, we don't have freedom of speech anymore. We lost our freedom of speech a long time ago. Yeah. We may have a whole lot of independent. There's a lot of Europeans, Brits, Americans, Germans in Ukraine fighting for Ukraine, because some of them for the excitement, and some of them, and you have volunteer units for where you have few neo-Nazis with Nazi swastika tattoos fighting alongside Jews, Muslims, atheists, Christians, Catholics, fighting the Russians, being the common enemy. But they love America because we may not send them weapons, and we could have sent them a lot more and a lot faster, but we're sending them money. And we're sending them a lot of money because, we print all this money that, it's not really worth anything, but we're printing all this money so they can buy Swedish Gripen, they can buy Danish F-16s or Dutch F-16s. They're spending the money to buy equipment somewhere else. More so, even the Americans, we couldn't even send them all the artillery shells if it wasn't because the South Koreans replenished our stocks. Right. But they're getting this stuff from all over Europe and all over the world, and that is the American money to a large extent that Zelensky is shopping with. So of course they appreciate and love America because we are to a large extent bankrolling this. And a lot of people say, well, we shouldn't be spending all the money on this and that. Well, all this dumb money Washington is spending, fighting the Russians, that's not the worst thing we can spend money on, I guess. We get a lot of training, we get a lot of know-how, but this is another battlefield, just like Vietnam, the Gulf, everywhere else, where we are testing every possible interesting new weapon system. And who's really making money on this while young Russians and young Ukrainians and civilians are all dying are the military contract companies. Everybody who's building military gear is making a crap ton of money. Yeah. And to a large extent, we are funding that. And it really is frustrating because you have a lot of Ukrainians. There's a lot of Ukrainians that left young, especially a lot of the gangsters. They're driving around their AMGs with their stripper girlfriends in Warsaw and Hungary and Czechia and Berlin, being a little annoying people because they have money and they're still getting help. While you have old men, and when they were the minute the Russians crossed the border, you had thousands of volunteers. My old interpreter for when I was there 20 years ago, first time, he signed up. You have they didn't have enough weapons for the people that signed up with the territorial guards. They got 2, 3, 4 weeks of training on basic training, sometimes less than that. Foreigners, you had 3 days in, you had foreign volunteers that no boot camp, no training, no nothing, no verification. Here's a gun. The Russians are that way. You just had an enormous rallying of people who wanted to go fight. And that was really, you see a solidarity in that sense. And when you were there, you see, and I'm like, I have no thoughts on the politicians of Ukraine because I don't know enough about Ukrainian politics. They're a little bit of the same Ukrainian oligarchs as the Russian oligarchs. They came from the same system. The corruption has the same color. Even if there's a border between them now, it's sort of the same thing. Yeah. In Russia, you can get away with being corrupt as long as you don't make enemies. Ukraine is probably not different. I can't speak to it because I didn't see it, because I can only talk about the normal people. And I'll tell you a story that really moved me. That shows there's a lot of self-sacrificing good people. One thing that really got me was in Bucha, where you had the Russian 234th Airborne Infantry, I think they were, who did a whole lot of nasty things. And And of course, traditionally, you start, the raping of women and children and young girls happened.
Right.
And when that sort of began, it wasn't, I don't have the impression it was totally widespread everywhere. Not everyone is doing horrible things, but horrible things were done. The local prostitutes of that town went to the Russian commander and said, leave the women alone and we'll service you. And that kind of self-sacrifice is sort of what I saw.
Right.
You have people that there's a Ukrainian medic. He drove up to the blown up bridge and he left the key in his car and put a little sign that if you need a car to flee, take my car. And then he went off to battle. You see something that you really, and then you see the sacrifice. I talked to young kids. The village was shelled, 8, 10, 12 years old, and they spoke English. They're playing soccer while we're looking at Stalin line bunker from the Second World War. And we're talking about this village where you have these little foil strips on every tree, every roof, because it's the quickest way to patch up holes from some fragments and shells. Every other house is burnt down. They stayed because they didn't have the money to flee. A lot of the people who fled could afford to flee. The people who didn't have any money or didn't have any cars, they stuck and hunkered it out. And there's these 3 kids. And I asked them, so you were here when the Russians were shelling that village for 2 weeks. There wasn't really any Ukrainian military. There was a little scattered here and there after they blew the dam. And they're like, well, that was scary. But, it's a lot of noise. And now we're going to go play soccer. I'm like, good for you. There's an air raid siren in a small town. There's air raids, all this drones, rockets, something. Every time something moves around the border, and you've got sirens going off. And there's a couple of teenagers just sitting in the town square, and they're on the phone, they're texting, they're talking, and they're 15, 16 years old. And I'm like, how the hell? I'm going to ask them. So, you got your country's at war. You're probably in school. Sirens going off, and you're sitting here joking and laughing. How do you feel about this? How are you guys doing? And this young girl, she said something that I don't think I would hear from any teenager in America if I heard the same situation. She was like, there's a war on, but we also have to live and laugh and have fun. And when the war comes, we'll deal with the war. But in between, life has to go on.
Right.
And I'm like, yes. And then you come back here and you see people with all these imagined problems. And, oh, my God, my nail broke on my cell phone. And you get all this idiocy.
Yeah, I know.
And you're like, you people have no idea what problems are.
Yeah.
And that is where I'm like, if you want to, I was like, yes, we need to support Ukraine to help the civilians. I don't give a damn about the government, but help these people from being killed. And the faster we can stop this, also, we may actually be able to save some of the Russian sons who doesn't want to be there, because the Russians I saw a Russian unit who lost some 110 people out of 135. They had a blocking force behind them to make sure they didn't run away. And they were under artillery and mortar fire for 2 weeks. They lost 70% of their regiment. They didn't want to be there. They were a month before, they were just at home, conscripts, told they were going on maneuver. Some of them the Russians didn't even bring their equipment to Belarus because they thought, there's another maneuver. We'll have our crap at home. We don't have to carry that around. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. And then they were woken up the day before. All right, get in the truck, drive to Kiev, follow the truck in front of you. You'll get more orders when you get there. Some of them rolled to the villages without even being locked and loaded because what's going on? They thought
they were on an exercise. Oh my!
And it was for the Russians. The Russians made the worst tactical mistakes I've ever seen for things they should know better. And if we all say, that can't possibly be. We all didn't believe. I didn't believe that the attack on Kiev was really an attack. I thought it was just a feint because, come on, you have 2,000 armored vehicles. When did you see that since the Second World War? And they failed? No. The only reason they failed is because they couldn't do it. And then you're looking at the way they did about it. They went on one stretch of road. One. And they're getting through build-up. The Germans took Kiev in 41, but I first had a huge encirclement and then a concentric attack and took the town. The Russians came down one little road completely. I mean, when did you ever see the Russians? They're the king of battle in war and snow and ice and mud. That's the Russians' environment. Russian tanks and ABCs getting stuck in mud? On what planet does that happen?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Tino, and they were reporting on that, and I thought, what has happened here? Where's Marshal Rokossovsky?
I mean,
this is it. This is not the Russian army I remember from history. But...
No. And it's like, you'd think, have you learned nothing from the Second World War? You took Kiev once successfully from the Germans. And there was one of our friends, well, he's a fellow historian. He signed up for the territorials. There were 97 civilians that joined up. They had a couple of weeks of training with 3 retired Ukrainian army officers, and they were all locals. They had 2 Maxim guns from 34. And they had a couple of those flat, I can't remember what they called it.
They were in working order, too.
They were in working order. And they had an old, I can't remember, with the rotating magazine on top as well, as a handheld heavy machine gun. Yeah. And they had 1 Javelin and a bunch of RPG-7s. And those 100 people destroyed almost 50 pieces of tanks, APCs, T-72s, with 2 Ukrainian tanks backing. Almost 50 pieces of armor in an hour and a half.
Unreal. For
any army to lose an hour, almost 50 vehicles and all personnel, all of the Russians dead in this little stretch of road because they were boxed in by they didn't know who they were. The Ukrainians would hit them, and then they get in the van to go around. Then the Russians try again. Then they'll hit them here. Then they'll go because they knew the area.
It's called Blokage.
And these are exactly. And these are old dudes and young kids who just volunteered. So with that kind of determination, you could also say, well, I don't think Russia really want to occupy all of Ukraine because there's going to be a lot of.
Well, I was about to ask you that. I frankly don't get the impression, and never had the impression, that this was about Russia occupying the Ukraine. For one thing, the occupation cost to Russia would be catastrophic, and as you say, the Ukrainians wouldn't go for it.
This was a regime change type of thing, the ones we always try to do.
Right.
That's really what it was, and I think after the first couple of weeks, when it became clear this is not a good idea, and even after 2 weeks of determined resistance for the Ukrainians, the Russians still pressed down an open road in a long stretch within artillery range of the Ukrainians. You're like, what are you doing? Without infantry support, being ambushed left, right, and center. You're like, what are you doing? I mean, not that I'm giving them ideas. I think they figured out that didn't work.
I have never been in any military, and even I know that this is not the way you do things.
I know. It's like, what are you? It's a KF. It really is.
Oh my!
I'll ask you a question.
That's KF, I heard, folks, not Kiev. KF.
KF.
Yes, go ahead.
I was going for the cluster F
yes,
word.
I know.
Sure.
Not munitions either. It's a cluster something else, not munitions.
Well, when the fecal matter hits the oscillation device.
Yes.
Exactly. So one of the things the Ukrainians were worried about is they said, well, what if Trump becomes president again? Is he going to take the aid away from Ukraine? And I don't think so. He's a fairly pragmatic guy when it comes to that kind of form when the show is going. But what do you think? It's a hypothetical.
Well, I think if Trump gets in office again, if there's one person that would try to perhaps even broker a negotiated end to this nonsense, it would be him.
Yeah.
Because he's friendly with Mr. Putin, and he has had personal dealings with Mr. Zelensky before. Yeah. So if there's anybody whom the two leaders would be inclined perhaps to trust, who's not the current outfit in the swamp, it would be Trump. The question I would have, Tino, is if the so-called American deep state would let him do that. The problem that the deep state has is they've tried everything short of the Kennedy haircut.
Yeah.
With Trump, and nothing has worked.
I mean, if he becomes president again, we first have to deal with the civil war that'll ensue from the left. But when that is done,
or vice versa, there's the other half of the problem that if Biden Joe, as I like to call him, since he's such a Chinese shill, that if he gets in, I think you're looking at equal possibility of civil war or something.
Yeah.
from the rest of the country. I'm in a part of the country. Look, the party in power retains power because they are the party in power in most major American cities. The rest of the country is not with them.
No, and that's why the gun grab is so.
That's why the gun grab
for them right now, because the only thing that's stopping them from all-out tyranny is the fact that lots of conservatives have an exponential amount of power.
And the gun sales are still going. They're still going. It's been 49 straight months, Tino. 49 of gun sales in this country topping 1 million per month.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that most Democrats, they have stocks in gun companies because...
Of course they do. Because they're not, most Democrats are not the Marxist wind-up toys that run the party. That's the other reality here that they don't get. But Trump, this country needs to get out of this mess that is created in the Ukraine. And if it's necessary to guarantee a neutral Ukraine, I think neutrality would be the best dang thing.
Agreed.
For the country.
That's what I said to every one of them out there. Knock this stuff off. You really don't. Just be Ukraine. Be neutral. Be yourself. Keep everybody away. And I also said
the Russians, trade with the Turks, trade with Europe, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, and I said stay out of. And I said, why do you want to be in the EU? The EU ruins everything. At this point, it's not even
it touches.
And I'll actually tell you some gossip on that.
Oh dear,
I'm probably going to get in trouble on that one. Well, maybe okay. Anyway, maybe I'll tell you that in private. Anyway, I know some people who told me something, but anyway, and I told them, well, why do you want to be in the EU?
Now, direct from the Kaiserschloss, we have.
And there's just like, well, we came from the Russian system. The EU seems to be a better system. I said, okay, that's only on the surface. Look at you want Schwab to come tell you how to grow your grain? Maybe you should just find your own way. And I think they should find their own way. Give them the nuclear weapons back. I don't care.
I call him der Hochklaus Freiherr von Bloschwab und Bombers. I mean, it's such a disaster.
It's like and the Europeans are just playing along. Okay, the Dutch and their farmers actually started putting down a foot down a bit. But
look, that's going to spread. That whole Dutch thing and what's going on in France right now, it's a matter of time before I think the EU comes unraveled. I really do. I don't see that structure. It's going to either have to be considerably revamped. And in all honesty, Tino, I don't see NATO surviving. I honestly don't.
I will see.
I think Europe. There's no European country that's gaining anything from this alliance with us.
No. I mean, I guess we're sending them money to buy their stuff with that they can't deliver for a couple of years.
They've got gobs of money of their own. They don't need ours.
Yeah,
and they can buy stuff with it.
I will say maybe an Atlantic treaty between the Korea and the South Korea, Japan, New Zealand, and those would be more pertinent given the Chinese threat, and considering the South Korea have almost they actually have more active troops per percentage of population than we do.
Yeah, I can do that.
But it's very, very interesting since we seem to have a very large problem recruiting. Gee, I wonder why.
I wonder why too. And golly, I am so confident in the ability of this woke, purple-haired, gender-neutral army going up against the Chinese and Russians. Boy, I can't wait for that to happen.
I mean,
do you remember Gordon Liddy?
Yes.
Okay, remember his show, his radio talk show? I got to tell everybody this, Tino.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. He would begin his talk show every single time with the German March bumper music that the Luftwaffe was playing at the beginning of the movie, The Battle of Britain. Okay. He began every one of his radio shows with this World War II German military march. And one time in the middle of the Clinton administration debating whether or not they were going to allow women into combat roles, he comes in and chimes in over the bumper music as it's playing. He says, "No women in that man's army, no siree." I thought, yeah, what he said. Yeah, I this woke military, they wonder why there's the recruiting is down. Well, thoroughly modern millie, take off your high heels and lipstick, look in the mirror, and look at the policies that you're promoting. That's the problem.
It's interesting because West Point just put out a request for reports on why recruitment, we think recruitment is down, and how they could, what the suggestions, how to make it better. And I actually sat down and I wrote it because, you know what? If you don't know, which I almost started with, you're the smartest, you're the top of the spear, you're the pointy end of the Mary West Point, and you don't know.
And you don't know.
Well, let me explain it to you.
Let me explain it. Most recruits in this country, in the American military, are coming from the, believe it or not, folks, from the original 7 states of the Confederacy. That's where the majority of recruits come from. And I guarantee you, as they would say in Alabama, those people do not want to fight in a woke military. That's not what they're fighting for, and that's not why they sign up. I'm sorry. And so long as the military pursues this policy, it will continue to decline. That's the bottom line.
It's very simple. You need, as a military, you need to ask yourself one thing, one question about any initiative is, will this initiative on question help us win wars? Yes
exactly.
Or no? If not, we don't need it. And if you appeal only to ultra minorities, many of them will join for financial benefit gain operations or college money, what have you. You will alienate the traditional high-speed recruits that join for patriotism. And the people who join for patriotism are the ones who are actually going to go fight for your country. Because you see that in Ukraine, you see who left the country and who signed up to fight. And why did they sign up to fight? For patriotism. That's the same reason why the Russian soldiers who actually volunteered for patriotism. That is the sharp end of the sword. And if you neglect those, or you marginalize patriotism in the military or in the administration, you are going to have look at what's happening in law enforcement. Law enforcement doesn't even have an upper age limit anymore because they're so desperate for people. It's funny, if you alienate your law enforcement and you marginalize them to the degree that they have, you'll have a problem finding cops. I wonder why.
Yeah, funny thing, Marxist policies are recruitment disasters.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? You know, I'm sorry, it's just not going to change. It's
and now. I was in Ukraine when Prigozhin, he went on his way to Moscow. And
I forgot, we haven't talked about Yevgeny. Okay.
We haven't even gotten to the Nazis yet, but we'll get there.
Oh, boy.
Or have we?
Yes, or have we?
I'm sitting there with a couple of captains, and the news comes in, and I'm like, so the Russians are now shooting at each other. I get this look like, the Russians. And it's like, they do things like that. Now, my take on and it's really interesting because if you look at interviews with Wagner soldiers and you look at their policy appears to be very much not like a traditional top-down military structure, but a one where everyone starts on the bottom. And every commander is more like your father figure to their. This is just, don't fry me for this. This is the impression I have from what I've seen, from what interviews they've done, from what Wagner soldiers have said, that they take their losses very personal because they're more a father figure to their children who are so casualties hurt. They're not from what I've seen, and that sort of fits in with what Prigozhin was doing when he was going after Shoigu and Gerasimov for not supporting them and not helping them, and even almost getting them killed, or actually getting them killed because of miscommunication with American troops, for one. So if he went to Russia to get rid of Gerasimov and Shoigu because of the love for his soldiers, He was not at any point in time trying to get rid of Putin. He wasn't. That wasn't his thing.
I never
They
believed
they go way back. They owe each other too much money, and the problem is he misunderstood how important Shoigu is.
Right.
Because Shoigu, besides the fact that he makes $110,000 a year, still have an $18 million house. He's very creative with his money. He also have his own PMC because every defense minister needs his own private army. Of course, it's Russia. But he was also instrumental in putting Putin in power.
Yes.
And he has survived every Russian administration and purge since 91. He is very political savvy. Yes. And I think Prigozhin completely misunderstood or underestimated just how connected he was. But I got to if Prigozhin did what he did to save his troops, to get rid of people he saw as a threat to his troops within the U.S. military and the Russian military, my hat off to him a little bit. And when they talk about, obviously he was living on borrowed time, Putin killed him. And I'm like, I'm not entirely sure Putin killed him. I think Shoigu killed him. Or Gerasimov killed him. But this is where I come from, a world of, I taught personal protection for almost a decade. I know parents who fly separately with their children, just in case.
Right.
How in the name of Bonaparte's balls did the top leadership of a military mercenary organization end up on the same damn plane going to Moscow?
Look, there's so many steps in this story that have bothered me, Tino, from a purely operational point of view. The first thing that we were told after the failure of the so-called coup was that the Wagner units were being relocated to Belarusia. Yes. I thought, oh, well, that's convenient. Stage a coup and pretend it's a coup so that you can move the whole outfit to Belarusia and redo your botched invasion of the Ukraine from the north. That's the first thing that crossed my mind.
That's what the Ukrainians thought too.
Well, they were being entirely reasonable to think that. That's the first thing I thought. Then the next thing we hear from is Prigozhin down in Africa where, just golly gosh, we just all of a sudden have a lot of former French colonies popping loose from the protective wing of Paris. Oh boy, isn't that interesting? Nothing to see here, folks. Move along. No possibility of Russian or Chinese involvement here. And I'm thinking, if you believe that, I've got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you. But yeah, and
Wagner's babysitting some gold mines for
exactly.
profit from in
and then the next thing we hear is all this Wagner leadership is getting on one plane.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. It doesn't make sense. First of all, I'll be very blunt. The Wagner leadership would never do that.
I certainly would hope not, because they're fairly smart people. They would. I mean, they got where they went because of that.
Which means I strongly suspect that the narrative that we're being told is a fabrication. It's a lie. I suspect, and I'll go on record here, I suspect that some of those people may still be alive. And whoever was on that plane, there's some other reason that they wanted to pretend to take the Wagner leadership out. I know it sounds nuts, but there's just no way that a group like that's going to stuff the entire command structure on one airplane.
It's just, and if anybody who knows anyone from the Wagner group or organization is out there is listening, please get in touch with me.
Yeah,
I would really like to talk about that, because I don't understand how that could have happened. Somebody from your interior security organization. I mean, I must have known better. And I keep thinking, do you remember 20 years ago, that movie with Natasha Henstridge? She was that really hot alien chick that escaped from a lab, and there was a chasing after her. Natasha Henstridge was really hot. And so the alien hunters, they were chasing her, and she knew it, and she caught this woman, and she cut her finger off with a bolt cutter, and the finger grew back again, but the finger she cut off, she threw in the car and blew up the car. So they found the DNA. Oh, the alien's dead. They blew up in the car. And I'm like, maybe Prigozhin's going to show up with a pinky missing, because, well, the Russians said they found DNA. And you must be able to trust the Russian media. I mean.
No, I'm sorry. I don't trust anybody's media. You know,
Oh,
I
well,
trust the Russian media when they're talking about us, but I don't trust the Russian media when they're talking about them.
well, Joseph, you know that news organizations, just like in Washington,
Oh
are just
yeah,
here to
yeah,
help you.
right, yeah, right. I
The
no,
world media here to
I
inform you.
look, folks. I trust the Russian media just about as far as I trust the New York Times, which is saying something, folks,
Oh,
or
but
the Washington Compost. You know, one of those two things. No, I'm sorry.
I mean, I think the problem we're going to have also in this, and that's one thing we talk about elections that's coming up, and they're all talking about, oh, the election will fix it, we'll fix it. I haven't heard anybody talk about how we're going to do to safeguard the integrity of the next elections,
No,
because everybody, even pundits on the right, they don't want to talk about what may have transpired last time.
no.
So what good is it?
Look. First of all, let me go on record again. Mathematically and statistically, it is impossible for the last election to be legitimate. That's the bottom line. You don't have over 100,000 votes show up with 90% of them being for one candidate. That's not a random sample,
No,
folks. That
no,
does
no, no,
not happen
no, no.
in real life.
When
It
you have
only
100
happens.
million ballots that's been sent out to God knows where, there cannot be integrity. No voter ID, there cannot be integrity.
I mean, they might. Yes, exactly. It is very worrying to me that the so-called opposition party, by which I mean the Republic thugs, um, that's what I call them for people who
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
They're commie-crats and Republic thugs, folks. But anyway,
They're special people.
they're a special people. I'm with you, Tino. I am absolutely flabbergasted that no one wants to address that issue, other than every now and then some right wing radio talk show host. But other than
Yeah.
that, you don't hear any
I mean,
leadership talking about
I understand everybody's afraid of the Stasi, who's still locking up people in Washington, keeping our political prisoners there, and I don't care.
Yeah,
That's what they are, because you cannot just have people who didn't do anything.
no argument from me. That's what they
And
are.
so, I mean, that is all intimidation, and that's what they've been
Yep,
doing. That's why everybody's been intimidated from
yep,
touching the issue.
yep.
But it's interesting because again, you look at all the Western leaders. Dear Christ,
We don't have any leaders, Tino.
no, we don't. We have these Muppets, but the
Yes.
people who are really in charge, you don't know their names. I mean, Biden's not in charge. He's not doing policy. He's not coming up with ideas. He's a Muppet. Somebody stand behind him with a hand is of it. Never mind. And somebody behind him is in
And
charge.
Biden's probably enjoying that too.
I mean, we are kind of like a weekend at Bernie's. I mean, somebody's wheeling him up, holding up his arm with a little,
You know, every time I think of Biden, I think of that scene from Weekend of Bernie's, where
Yeah.
they're traveling down the canal in the speedboat, and they're dragging the corpse behind them, and every now and then he hits a buoy with a clang. That's what I think of Joe Biden, because this guy is an absolute disaster. And whoever is running the government, whatever committee it is, they've given you Mayorkas and the little guy with his dress and bra that's running the Atomic Energy Commission or some such nonsense. I mean,
and for those of you who are sitting abroad in other countries who doesn't know exactly what we're referring to, just when you're done here, you do a Google search the guy Biden put in charge of nuclear waste in America. You'll find it. You'll see. And despite the fact that countless times I have to assure my friends in Europe that this was not a joke,
it is entirely real. Yes.
It's terrifying. And you're seeing, well, maybe it's time to secede from. Maybe we should take DC and set it adrift.
Boat.
Like a little secession never hurt anybody.
Let's go dig up General Beauregard and get those 60-pounders lined up around Fort Sumter and have at it, you know.
I mean, I always thought Stonewall Jackson was such a cool guy. I mean, I don't know.
Well, the Confederacy did have some pretty crackerjack good generals. They didn't have much else. They didn't have much else to work with. So,
well, manufacturing is a real thing, you know.
Yeah, you know, but yeah, I'm totally agreed with you in all of this. The real bottom line, Tino, is that from my perspective, the Republican Party quit being a genuine party of opposition in
Yeah.
1952, and that's going back a ways. And the reason why I say 1952 was that was the year, of course, that Eisenhower basically euchred Senator Taft at the Republican National Convention. Senator Taft, if you'll recall, was the guy that kept saying we have to roll back the Franklin Roosevelt New Deal, and he made no bones about that. The whole thing had to be undone.
Yeah.
And Eisenhower, of course, was, well, we got to compromise, and and go out and play golf. No, that was the moment at which the Republican Party quit being an opposition party, and it's been downhill ever since.
What do you not see? McConnell's going to step up and
exactly.
We have some serious problems here. But then again, I just saw that over the Nord Stream pipeline, apparently UFOs were seen there. So now we know the aliens did it,
or the Pentagon.
I thought it was a naval unit out of.
Well, look, the Pentagon is busy turning all of Congress into a UFO convention. I mean,
what do you make of that?
It's like I say, Tino. I think they're prepping the narrative. They're prepping the narrative, and
for the fake UFO invasion.
They need an ET threat.
They tried everything else.
They've tried everything else, and now they need an ET threat. Here's the problem, that as I see it, and I've said this many times. I go back to C.S. Lewis's warning: beware of when you call down high heaven on your heads, because sometimes it actually shows up. And I think that's what they're playing around with here.
It really interests me that if you look at the Air Force admission that these UFO videos were real, and the last whistleblower CIA guy on the Hill who's talking about, I have a problem with
Grush with his medals.
Yeah, I mean,
folks, Hermann Goering had medals. That doesn't mean we need to listen to him.
No, and he didn't step on the Hill and say he wasn't the guy who saw the stuff. He just talked to a guy who said he saw the stuff. That's not good enough. But if we go back 20, 30 years, if the Air Force had said and admitted that, oh yeah, these UFO videos, they're real, we don't know what it is flying around us, every headline of every newspaper in the world would have aired that story. Yep. Now we're like, yeah, we don't know what's flying around, and no one cares.
No,
everyone's sitting on their cell phones.
It's not that. What has happened is anybody familiar with the field of ufology would know the history of the government's lies and deceptions up to this point. It's what they've done is they've squandered their capital. No one trusts this government in anything it says. Why should we believe them now? Why should we believe them now?
Well, Joseph, are you saying you cannot trust your government? They're here for you.
They're more concerned about the borders in the Ukraine than they are the southern border of this country.
Well, they keep opening that one.
They keep opening that one. We've got billions for the Ukraine and not billions for the ranchers and farmers in southern Texas or New Mexico or Arizona or California.
And while China is building a coal plant a week, we are actually giving them incentives to destroy ours, just to make sure that we absolutely are FUBAR.
It is absolutely nuts. It is absolutely nuts.
And that's another thing that I know we probably can guess the same answer. For many years, I worked with personal protection, and I worked with stalking victims and battered women and women who had problems. And even before the Trump and Hillary election, I did a public statement that whoever won, do something about the slaves, the women, the children, the young boys that will be in sexual slaved around the world. Do something about the illegal sex trade. And now the movie comes out that was held for a long time. How can we go to a point where we know that sex slavery is going on to the tune of 4 million a year? And now it's a conspiracy theory by the left.
I know.
Where's that coming from?
Tino, I don't know, other than you know that I have maintained for many years that there is an entirely off the books hidden system of finance.
Yeah.
And I am not talking about black budget, folks. I'm talking about an actual system of finance that is absolutely and totally hidden. And it vastly eclipses the public systems
Yes.
in terms of volume. Tino, the only thing that I can think of is that the human trafficking component of that hidden system
It must be.
it is a large component of it, because that human trafficking also enables a labor pool that they don't have to pay.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I can think of. And if you go back to the first Trump administration, he made the human trafficking issue one of his issues, and was
he did. Yes, he did.
Also, and I really think that was more than anything else he did, was one of the things that upset the American deep state against him so much, because he's taking direct aim at a source of income for the clowns in America and all sorts of other agencies. And while we're talking about that, to me, it's very interesting that the Chinese counterintelligence defector, you recall, of a couple years ago,
the one that disappeared,
the one that went to the DIA, not the CIA, NRO, NSA, none of those agents. He chose the DIA, and I think that was very deliberate.
Yes,
there's something going on there that we don't know about. All I can tell you is it's interesting that John Kennedy had his hands in the establishment of the DIA.
Mm-hmm.
So
to curb in the CIA and all these wonderful letter agencies who are now turn more on Americans.
The Stasi, as you call it.
Yes, doing great. Well, and that's one thing I will say about Ukraine. There is part of the trafficking that is going on underneath or undercurrents of Ukraine, and that is something they have to deal with.
Yes.
And I always said, send them whatever they need, but do it with oversight. And I always said that some of the stuff that does disappear doesn't necessarily, because stuff does disappear in transit. Very strange.
Sure.
I can send you a letter, and I know I have, and I can have it. I can know exactly when you receive it, but I can't ship a container of RPGs to the frontline Ukraine until dudes even sign off on it. That's wrong. But a lot of the stuff that disappears, and I've seen that, and I have some hunches. Some of that just doesn't disappear in Ukraine. It disappears before it gets there.
It disappears before it gets there, and it turns up in Mexico.
Yeah. And I'll also say that the Ukrainian military are now taking deliveries directly from, say, the Polish. It doesn't go through central. It goes straight to the military. And they are dealing with corruption internally themselves without saying too much, that if Schmucko starts disappearing an ammo truck, then something happens to him and they'll take care of it. Right. Because they damn well know they need what they need, because they're fighting to survive. But there's some stories coming out of the trafficking, and there's some stories coming out of Ukrainian kids being sent to Germany who's disappeared. There's something's going on that also has a slight relevance.
I've said from word one that there's a human trafficking component to what's going on with this war. There is a money laundering component. There's a bio-warfare component. And for those remembering, there's a GMO component. There's a big agri component.
And that's why they need to stay out of the EU.
Well, this is the other thing about the Ukraine. The Ukraine had approved GMOs because they made all those deals with Monsanto. Oh. And Russia at the same time outlawed GMOs. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff under the surface going on with this war in terms of financial interests. But human trafficking, I'm absolutely convinced that the Ukraine is the current. I suspect, Tino, that it's a transshipment hub.
That's And what is even more sad, and this is from an outsider who's not Ukrainian and not Russian. The sad thing about this is you have two countries who are fighting, who are not that different. They're both fairly conservative. They have the same mindset. They're on the level. We take the level down from government and from oligarchs, and we take the normal people. They're really not that different. And for
No.
them to be killing each other because of political intrigue and money and all that is just
I'm Eastern Orthodox, and I look at this whole thing as just totally unnecessary.
yes.
Because they're the same culture, they're more or less the same religion, they're the same cosmology, they have very similar languages. They both trace the beginnings of their culture to Saint Cyril and Methodius, the Byzantine missionaries to the Slavs. There's not a Ukrainian who alive, religious or atheist, that doesn't know who those two are, and there's not a Russian alive, religious or atheist, that knows who those two are. So this is the other thing. We're getting involved in something there that we simply, as modern Americans in this wonderful Masonic experiment that we live in, don't understand. We don't understand it, and we're incapable of it.
I mean, the State Department traditionally has no idea what they've gotten themselves involved in ever.
Well, true.
It's like, well, they don't even know what things are on them. I mean, dear Lord, people that needs to go.
Yeah.
And
no argument for me.
And it's sad because I look at Eastern Europe, and I really like Eastern Europe because you have all of it. If anything from Germany and then east, you have all these wonderful conservative values. People wear white on Fridays, and I swear, when you get the homegrown food, if you get the homegrown strawberries, now it's during strawberry season. Oh dear God, you've never ever, for those Americans who have not traveled outside of America, besides the fact you really should, while there still is a place to go, the fresh homegrown fruits and berries without Monsanto, without GMO. Is phenomenal. You actually have flavor, color.
You actually have flavor in the food, and it's actually nutritious. Yes.
Oh Lord, yeah. But I can talk about the strawberries and the food for forever. But it's not a food show. But one day I will do a food show from Poland and Ukraine. Now, speaking of all these wonderful, lovely things they're about to embark on us, I want to show you something the Nazis did.
Oh, wonderful.
Here's a picture of the Washington.
I've been waiting for Nazis. We can't have a show without Nazis.
We can't. I mean, so to catch you guys up, and I warned you that this was coming, so you should have seen that episode. But last year, we found a location in Austria that was built by Siemens. The U.S. military have no idea what it was. The purpose unknown is what the statement is. And we found a structure underground. There's a lot of Siemens electronic things. It was built in an old beer brewery. And then we found a square thing with some hallways leading to it, some holes in the ground. Nobody knows what it is. And we went back there. And I decided, well, there's a hole in the ground, and let's go see what actually is underneath those. And what's inside the thing besides ladder rungs, there's also a whole bunch of radiation that I wrote you about.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can actually ship it. So I had my guy did a graphics on this. And wait a minute, let me find out how do I share? Where's the share thing? Percent.
You lay down, sweetie.
Why can't I share this? There must be a way. Sorry, guys. I'm just being an idiot here. Share screen. That's the one I want. Since I have two screens, I have to make sure I give you the right screen. That was the wrong screen. This is the right screen. Wow. Ta-da. Fine. So here. Now you see it. There you go. So for everybody, this is the hallway. This is the thing that we saw. Here's the little fan. And this is the square box of things. So you guys, you need to see this episode so you actually know what you're talking about. Those of you who've seen it, this is it can be a little internal here. Now, what was interesting is, so I crawled inside this thing, and this is what I found underneath it. This is the thing. These are the holes, and then you have this leads into the thing, and this leads separately into the thing. So does this. And so does this. So this is what you're looking at. So now you have a connection through all these ducts in the wall to the next room. And in here, so you have 4 separate axes that's all bent and curved. So you have either the pipes or cables running into it, and then coming out of all these into the room next to it.
Uh-huh.
So you have something like this. And inside it, there's a letter rung on the other side, and you had the radiation up to what 194 had it. But all of these, so there's four separate, completely separated. There's no access. Okay, I'm pointing at my fingers. There's no access between these. There's a wall between here. So this is compartmentalized. This is its own compartment. This is its own compartment, and this is its own compartment that stops here. So they're all blocked off. The professor at Siemens had no idea.
That astonishes me that they have no idea, because before I give you what I'm thinking, and I'm definitely thinking something looking at this.
And there's probably a building up here as well on top.
Okay.
Because this is sealed off now on top, but up here was a building from the drawings. There's some structure up here as well.
Okay, that green box thing.
This is the thing.
Yeah, with the orange thing underneath it. Those little holes, are there little holes between that orange thing and the green box enabling? Yes.
Yes, there's an exit. There's an access there. The blue and the yellow and the orange things, they all converge into the thing.
Into that,
but all separately. They're not. There's no access between the tunnels leading into the thing until they get to the thing.
Right. Now, is there any in that round, long structure where the green box interrupts it about halfway through that round thing?
Well, if you remember, you have the walls.
Yes.
Above you had the walls that was separated and askew. So this is sealed off in its own little room.
Right.
And I can't figure out this. And so is this. This is a room sealed off with a door here. This is a room sealed off with a door here. And it's this hallway above here is enclosed. This hallway leading there, and then you can walk around the thing on all sides. And then there's again here is another wall with a window in.
I want to ask you what's going to sound like an incredibly dumb question.
Not from you.
On any of the levels that we're talking about here, either the elongated structure with the round roof or the blue thing underneath it, at the ends of the longitudinal axis in either level, are there any indications of mirrors or highly polished quartz surfaces?
It would be impossible to say because they're just stone walls. Okay. There are places things could have hung on the walls.
Okay.
But now there's just the stones remaining. I mean, everything has been.
You haven't found any quartz chips or little, like chips of a highly polished reflective surface on the ground?
No, but I am going back, and now I will look.
If you go back, look for things like that anywhere in or around that facility, because I'll tell you what I'm thinking looking at this diagram. That green structure there that's so highly radioactive, I think you're looking at the remnants of a facility of possibly a chemical laser isotope enrichment facility.
That would be something Siemens would do.
That would be definitely something that they would do. And the long axis that you're looking at, where the green box sits right in the middle, that long axis, I think, could possibly be the optical cavity, or at one time have housed the optical cavity for a chemical laser. And I say chemical because that would have been, at that time, the easiest physics available to them for a laser. We have to remember something, folks. The physics for lasers was there in the 1930s. The big mystery has always been, why did it take so long for people to come up with a laser? And I've argued in my books, for those who are listening, um, I've argued in my books that, in fact, the reason is that the Nazis were using chemical lasers for isotope enrichment. And therefore, that fact had to be kept out of print, because laser isotope enrichment is incredibly easy if you know how to do it. It does not require a massive labor pool, which is why the German program doesn't show all the massive labor for isotope enrichment that the Manhattan Project showed.
Yeah.
And the result of laser enrichment is much, much purer than a single pass through any of the isotope enrichment processes this country had available. This looks to me like what they may have done, Tino, is, as the chemical laser facility at Auschwitz was being shut down, that they probably decided to move that facility underground elsewhere, somewhere in the Reich, that would enable them to continue processing isotope. That may be why you're getting such off the scale radioactive measurements in that green box area. I think you're looking at the structure, the remains of a chemical laser isotope enrichment facility, and it had to be big to do the kind of volume, mass that they needed.
Yeah, because it certainly wouldn't be a cyclotron, because you would have to access that from. And this is not exactly something you can access. Although these hallways, you can't stand up straight, but they're not small.
But that would have been perfect. That's my point. You can't stand up in it. That's why I think that's the optical chamber for your chemical laser.
So what would I expect to find in here? Because for some reason, this whole floor in here is deeper than here. There'd be some sort of machinery in here that also needed this ventilation. Remember, there's a hole in there for the air vent.
Yeah, you're going to have an enormous amount of heat generated from this thing.
Yeah.
So you're going to have ventilation. You're going to have refrigerant, cooling, air conditioning, so on and so forth to do this. And you're also going to be drawing a lot of electrical power for the pumping of the optical cavity.
So would I be looking at generators right here, or power
or somewhere close?
Because all these cables would go into the next room, then they would go somewhere, do something.
Right.
And there's nothing in that room. It's full of tires, which makes it a little hard to even see the floor. It has literally been filled up with crap, almost deliberately. And I told them, we're going to empty this. And they all gave me that look, but like, well, volunteers.
This is how far underground, this whole thing? How far would you say?
Well, there's this little staircase here leading down. So, and honestly, I can't see the floor. Right. I don't know. I simply don't know, because I don't know how much crap there's there. I can't see the floor anywhere. It could be anything from 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 feet. I don't know. Yeah, and I want to see mounts. I got to see the floor to see if there's any mountings.
Yeah, this looks like a facility that they've converted to a chemical laser for isotope enrichment. And by that time, the other thing we have to remember is that at that time, a chemical laser, they would have had to literally brute force their way through empirical experimentation, to get the right frequency to tune the laser to get the right purity and quantity of a particular isotope that they needed. Which is one reason that the Auschwitz facility they recorded breaks down so much. Well, a Buna factory, the Germans know how to make Buna, and they're not going to have a Buna factory break down on them.
And Lord knows I tried to get in there, but there's a whole new bunch of businesses there, and they're all fenced in nicely with active security. So I have to get permission. And
at this facility?
No, at the one in Auschwitz.
Oh yeah, okay.
I tried to go there because I'm like, I'm gonna see what we're looking at.
So they've got security there now.
Well, there's an existing business there. There's a whole bunch of industries that moved in there, which makes it a little complicated. Yeah, surprise, right?
Oh my word!
There's lots of industry at Auschwitz. There's also a tattoo shop. All right, that's bad taste. That's not funny.
That's bad taste. Yes, Tino.
That's bad taste.
Moving along.
Horrible. Yeah, but there is an underground here.
Yeah.
Underneath, but I don't know again because this is full, so I don't know how deep it is. But I know from the spiral staircases that goes down to another. So there's a level underneath this, and I wonder if this continues down on that level. Because whatever they did, they peeled the building off the top and they filled it up with sand, and that's why the sand is kind of pouring out inside. And I have my sand, basically sand, not even dirt, sand.
Uh-huh.
Regular run-of-the-mill sand.
That's a giveaway.
How so?
Because that's what you do if you were worried that there were lots of radioactive materials, waste materials. Yes. And the other thing that's interesting about this diagram to me, I'm even looking at this diagram, I'm even now more convinced than I was the last time that blue thing, that blue long stretch thing from the previous diagram, this is looking like some sort of isotope. Yeah. This is looking increasingly like some sort of, bless you, isotope enrichment facility. It's just wow. I think you're looking at a large primitive chemical laser isotope enrichment building here that they very cleverly took this old beer keller and turned it into a research facility and
there's a lot of electronics and Siemens stuff and things in there. The rumor was that they were making backlight switches for jets and things, but when the Allied took it and they looked at it, their report said, we don't know what this is.
No, no, this doesn't look like they're making switches for jet aircraft.
No, or anything. There's nothing. No, manufacturing.
Siemens is not making beer.
I mean, there is backlight cookers there. The huge cauldrons where you would. There's a few of those still rusting away, but no. You don't need anything like this to make switches for an airplane. That's just so. The official story, it doesn't work. And again, go back to the wartime documents. They said that we don't know what this is. That was the U.S. Army statement that we don't know. A purpose unknown, I think it was. It was registered, viewed, but.
Let's go back to those bakelite furnaces that you showed me the last time we talked.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you saw it? Yes, you did.
Yeah, I did. How many of those were there?
Well, there's only, I think, pieces of 2 left.
Were there any indications of how many might have been there?
No. It's really been wrecked. And also, then you had people come through and filming movies there, and there's a gun range there. And
how big is, without this part of the facility that I think may have been a chemical laser enrichment facility, but the rest of the facility is fairly substantial with lots of underground galleries and so on and so forth.
Yes, I'm just going to see if I can actually find the. Where are you? That's not you. Where are you? There you are. I'm trying to see if I can find. Here are all my secret finds.
And this is
all my secret files. I'll see if I can find them.
This is close to Vienna, right?
Yes, despite the fact that I was trying very hard to not let that on because I didn't really want the government to come have a look at it and shut it down.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry.
Thanks, Joseph. Here we go. Yes, we're trying very hard to keep the location secret, but
I'm sorry.
Where is it? There it is.
Well, you can edit that out.
Well, I think that. Wait a minute. I'm gonna try to find. This is all the different hallways. That's hard to tell.
The name of this place is Schlachthaus Gas. What does that say?
Stop saying things.
Oh my word!
I
never saw that description. Okay.
I'm trying to find. See if there's one map with all
Okay,
the.
that little term right there is I think a confirming clue that we're looking at a chemical laser facility, because a chemical laser would,
But yes, it is fairly big.
well, yeah, would not only be big but would run on gas. So the optical cavity is going to be full of a gas like argon or krypton or something like that.
Yes, and there is a delivery drive. You can drive trucks right in next to the facility and unload whatever
All
with
right.
ramps and everything.
What I think you're looking at then, following on, putting all this together and going back to that bakelite furnace business, that now makes a lot more sense now that I've seen that diagram. If this was a chemical isotope enrichment facility, then I think the rest of the facility, you're looking at an actual bomb production facility. Because all you need to do once you get the
There it is. This is the whole overview.
Yeah, well, all you need to do once you get the enough isotope enriched is metallicize it,
Yeah.
and then build your implosion device and put the plastique around it, and voila, you've got your bomb.
And this is the thing, and
Yep.
it's all shielded in by dirt walls. By the way,
Yeah.
and then you can drive in somewhere here.
Yeah, I think you're looking at a bomb production facility. And here's the thing. If you're using laser isotope enrichment to make your critical mass, the purity of the result that you get, you've got to remember the Manhattan Project is enriching uranium with sluice gates, gaseous diffusion, and several passes through that, and before you even get to all the passes through cyclotrons. And you're still only dealing with a U-235 critical mass of somewhere between 40 and 60% purity. And hence, you've got a critical mass of about 50 kilograms. This is
one of the problems with the reasons why the Manhattan Project was so big was because the Americans wasn't entirely sure how to go about it, so they tried everything at the same time.
They had several inefficient means of isotope enrichment, and they were literally having to run this stuff through several passes. You don't need to do that with chemical laser enrichment.
No.
So if the Germans are doing that, and I've argued elsewhere that this is the way they approach the bomb and the enrichment, is you're going to result with a much purer isotope sample. That's going to cut down on the critical mass, because you're going to have a much better neutron flux that's going to set off the chain reaction.
Yeah.
So you're not going to have nearly as big or bulky of a bomb to produce the same amount of bang.
True. Was it Paul Hartek who and his team that developed that started with 8 people of a team? They were enriching with a
Hartek. Yeah, you're talking about the farm hall transcripts where Paul Hartek says that when he's talking to the other physicists there, that the other physicists are saying, well, we would have required enormous amounts of manpower for that, just like the American program.
Yeah.
And Paul Hartek chimes in at that point. He says, oh, you only need 10 people for that. Yeah. You'd be amazed at what I saw at IG. And I'm quoting him.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, oh my God, what sort of enrichment process only requires 10 people that IG Farben would be involved with? Answer: a chemical isotope laser.
Yeah. And it was a staggering amount they were able to enrich in very little time.
God, yes. 600 pounds or some unbelievable number at the end of the war. And I'm thinking, this is not an unsuccessful atomic bomb project here, folks. No. I
mean, they're just smart enough to not drop it when they have on anybody, when they have the Russians and the Americans within their own border. It's a better thing to trade.
Yeah.
You start blowing up something when you have 50,000 tanks surrounding you. Nothing's going to get rid of them.
Nothing's going to get done. And, I personally think that probably they did explode a couple of proto devices during the war in the East. Yes. That's another story. But
I was there. I have soil from one of them.
Oh, really?
And it's not really radioactive. but it's got a whole bunch of weird things in it that I need to get analyzed. Yeah, I may or may not
Analyze
have.
them for the possibility of a fuel air explosive
I
or
don't.
cold.
That's what I mean. Obviously, that would be the easy solution, but that wouldn't really explain that the victims had nosebleeds and headaches for days after, and
No,
they had burnt bodies. Yeah, well, that would done. The huge explosion in Jonastal, and I figure, well, there's also a test bunker right there that's looking at this proving ground. The trenches are still there. They
no.
dug the people they dug it, they put them in
I,
trenches, walls, vehicles, and it's all still there. Just a little over years.
I'm talking much further east.
Oh, the one
Much
in
earlier.
in
Much earlier.
oh, the one in Sims affidavit.
Kursk.
Kursk. Yes, that's
Yeah.
the interesting thing. I don't know because I weren't invited.
Well, if you ever get to Prohorovka, take a little soil sample and
Oh, I will.
bring it back, and because there's something going on, or for that matter, if you ever get to Sevastopol.
Well, there's a few people in the way right now, but
I know that, but there's something very fishy about Sevastopol as well.
I wanted last year, 2 years ago. I was planning on going last year, and then
everybody says that Schwerer Gustav was just a big waste of money and effort, and I tend to agree with them.
Yeah,
but it's very rare if you can find it, but there is a photo that the Germans actually took of that one round that penetrated through 90 feet of earth and then penetrated a 16-foot concrete reinforced steel bunker and detonated that ammo dump under Severnaya Bay. And the Germans took a picture of this thing, and it's clear it's a projectile path from Gustav. I mean, I would not have wanted 14 tons of high explosive landing on top of my head. That's like a British earthquake bomb. But
I know. I do know that they were pumping in on the Eastern Front. They were using the air fuel mixture to pump into bunkers and then setting it alight. Yeah. And I know they were testing it on the Nebelwerfer system as well.
The Nebelwerfer, yeah.
So I would, and that would, I mean, the Nebelwerfer system would do it at a huge aerial explosion. That would have
worked. You can say fuel air bombs and carpet bombing with the Nebelwerfer system. And even Skorzeny writes about them using these weapons in 1941 during the final drive on Moscow.
And the Nebelwerfer was the first rocket that was fired from underwater, attached to a submarine.
Yes.
The submarine, I think we sold it to somebody else after the war, and then eventually it disappeared or something. But it worked. You actually have the pictures of the rockets coming out of the water off Peenemünde.
Yep.
And not far from Peenemünde. Yeah, I have the coordinate for where the Sinsa affidavit explosion supposedly took place.
Really?
Yes, I'm going to go there and grab a little soil.
Well, when you get that soil and get there, please do let me know, because I was extremely lucky to find that affidavit and publish it. I'm surprised no one else had.
It's funny because interestingly, that area where that happened, that whole piece of beach territory was bought by a Russian oligarch a couple of years ago. He was going to develop it into a whole beach city.
Well, isn't that convenient?
It is. And it's also on hold. So I have a little. I guess.
Golly, I wonder why.
You bought us a little time there. But I really want. There's so many places out of the East that I really got to go take a look at when. So we got to get this whole war thing stop it so we can go out and get soil samples.
Yeah, because at least that's that part of the southern pincer of the Kursk salient. I think that's either close or within the borders of the Ukraine, if not the Russian oblasts that.
I think it's on the other side.
Is it on the other side?
I'm afraid I think so.
Well, it's Belgorod is north of Kharkov,
Where is it?
which
Yeah,
would have been behind German lines at the beginning.
Yeah, it is officially in Russia. Yeah, it's on the other side.
If it's officially in Russia, then I'm pretty certain that they've probably turned that whole battlefield, or at least portions of it, into a national park.
That's
Putin
what
was just there.
That's what they do everywhere. Everywhere in Germany, wherever there's any Kamala's tunnels, any testing, anything that may have been experimental has turned into a national preserve. Can't touch, can't go there, can't dig.
Interesting.
You see that stupid little owl, Naturgebiet, everywhere. Austria the same. Everywhere, any area where Kamala was, where there was any kind of testing or even thoughts of it, Naturgebiet means you can't touch it. No digging, no excavation, nothing. And I went to meet with the Austrian Bundesimmobiliengesellschaft.
Yeah.
Because I said, well, can I at least see you destroy part of a bag? They showed up with a lawyer. You always know when you're having a meeting with bureaucrats and they bring a lawyer, you know it's going to be fun. So I brought a doctor, professor, architect with me myself. But I figured, I'm not going to bring a lawyer, you muppets. They were afraid that maybe I was going to make claims that they destroyed this Bergkristall without having any reason to. And I'm like, tell me what your reasons are. That was a very nice meeting. It was very, very friendly. And I said, okay, when you had filled all this stuff in, all this tunnel system, you filled it in, you must have at least taken photos of it before you destroyed it. As
right.
Let me see the photos. Photos. I have to get permission from the Minister of the Interior in Austria before they will even admit that there were perhaps photos of the survey. I'm like, you destroyed it. What's the problem? No one gets fired. Don't want to get in trouble. We don't have anything. We can't do anything. Can't go in there. And Kellerbau, the SS tunnel system, where they had the University of Linz, where there's an SS tunnel research, that can't go in there either.
Wait a minute. Whoa.
They didn't even know it existed.
Whoa.
Yes.
You're telling me that the same policy is in place in Germany, Austria, and Poland, wherever there's a facility that could be connected to Kamler, and that the same little notices are posted.
Aber so ist es, mein Herr. Although the Poles are a little bit more liberal.
Yeah, right. So we have a consistent policy from 3 different countries.
Mm-hmm.
So who's putting the pressure on for this policy?
I'll tell you something else interesting. After the war, when the Cold War descended on the Riese project sites, of course, with the Soviets, and they kicked out all the German inhabitants there, then an American military company delivered to them ultra-hot furnaces behind the lines after the Cold War to destroy chemical agents during the Cold War. I didn't know we actually traded with them at that point.
Furnaces.
The furnaces you need to destroy chemical agents and chemical weapons were sent to the area of the Riese projects. I'm just saying.
Upper Silesia.
Mm-hmm.
What was the company?
I am going to have to go through the interview I did with a historian and find out, because I do not remember. But I will find out and I'll tell you.
Oh, this gets fishier and fishier.
I mean, the same thing. They keep saying that Kamla was able to travel after the war into Czechia and Poland and
after his 4 different deaths. Yes,
exactly 14. Actually, I think we're up to 14.
Oh, are we up to 14 deaths?
Yes, and 2 or 3 different graves as well.
Well, that's convenient.
I mean,
you got to hand it to old Martin. He really knew how to put together a Nazi international, didn't he?
Right?
Gee. If you wonder why the world is crazy, folks, it's because the Nazis survived the war. And they're secretly running things.
And I keep pointing to the fact that everybody in Adenauer's cabinet were all Nazis.
We're all Nazis. Jeez.
Including Adenauer.
Including Adenauer, I know.
And I'm just saying, it's not like the EU doesn't have any resemblance of a top-heavy bureaucratic, all-knowing, all-dictatorial, all-seeing surveillance state at all.
Well,
right?
Not to mention the fact that the whole structure of the EU looks very suspiciously like that 1942 Reichsbank study on how to set up a European Union. Gee.
I mean, it's just like, it's just too bad that the originator of the European construct didn't live long enough to see it. I mean Heinrich Himmler didn't see it in 55.
Well, Hallstein did.
Hallstein did, and he was working for Himmler when he presented it in 42. Yeah. And that's why it's just so funny. They can't
probably
see.
Why Hallstein got rid of old Heinrich.
Oh. I will still say to the day that the British killed Himmler.
Oh yeah,
hands down.
Yeah, I think so too.
Absolutely. And that's my question is then why would they let Himmler live? Because he knew a lot of stuff.
Well, look. Since we're on our Nazi phase here of our interview, there's just too much about the end of the war that makes no sense. Not the least of which is Rudolf Hess.
Yeah.
And that whole very bizarre stint in Britain and whatever it is the British were up to.
Yeah.
With that whole thing. There's something very, very rotten there. Yeah. And I don't know what it is, but go back to the steps that the British were taking before World War I. Isolate and encircle this thing, meaning Central Europe, Germany.
Yeah.
There's just something very, very fishy there, and the current incumbent on the throne of the Court of St. James, there's just something there's something wrong. Why they are letting this happen, I don't know that the British are letting this happen. I think the whole Brexit thing, I'm with Catherine Fitz. I think it was Britain did not want the Germans getting their hands on those tax havens via the European Union. They just did not, can't have that. I mean, so there's been an economic financial war going on between this country and Germany since prior to 9/11. I'm convinced of it. And I think the British are in on this. There's something going on beyond what we're seeing on the news.
I mean, what it really lends itself into a hidden system of finance, a hidden system of government and control. Because when we look at the Muppets in charge in governments in Western Europe and in America, these people can't keep a government or a country together. So the level below them are doing it. Somebody's running things, and it's not the people we know the names of.
Look, here's my other problem with what's going on, and it's something I talk about occasionally with another friend of mine, that we follow the reemergence of royal symbolism in Europe, and it's particularly palpable in Russia and Germany. I don't need to rehearse the reemergence of symbolism from Tsarist Russia that surrounds Vladimir Putin. I don't need to do that because everybody can see it.
Yes.
And even the uniforms of the guards, the dress uniforms of the guards at the Kremlin right now, folks, those are the uniforms of the Preobrazhensky Prakat regiment. That was the Tsar's personal guard. Those are the uniforms they're wearing in the Kremlin, which I'm wondering, what the hell is going on with this? 30 years ago, that would have been the last thing that a Russian soldier would have been caught wearing, especially in the Kremlin.
Yeah.
And then you go to Berlin, And they've rebuilt the old Kaiserschloss. The entire building is there. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
It's there, Tino. Go look at the video on YouTube. Wilhelm II's palace, the old Kaiserschloss, was rebuilt in Berlin on the ground that it used to occupy when they tore down that post-war Soviet, whatever it was, monument to the Republic. Yeah, look at it.
Berlin Palace?
Yeah. The Stadtschloss.
Bloody hell, they did.
Yeah, they did.
Well, let me share that with everybody. So
there it is.
That's the old one, and that's the new one.
Yeah. And guess what else they did? Are we sending messages here?
9.
Of course not. 9. And they crowdfunded it, Tino.
Well, I mean, with the funding system the Germans have, they wouldn't get it funded any other way.
I'm flabbergasted. And then you read these articles in Der Spiegel about Prince Georg Friedrich, whatever his name is, who's the head of the House of Hohenzollern. They have been in secret negotiations with the German federal government for over 5 years for the return of Hohenzollern lands in Rhineland-Westphalia.
So am I getting Prussia back?
I don't know. That's the other thing. Most people don't remember, but Putin actually offered, when Schroeder was chancellor, to sell the Kaliningrad Oblast to Germany. Do you remember that?
Really?
Yes. And Schroeder says we don't have enough money to buy it.
Yeah, but okay.
I'm serious as a clam, Tino. They actually did. And I'm thinking, what the hell's going on here? What the hell is going on here with the symbolism here is what I'm getting at. The return of this symbolism. The only ones thus far who haven't joined the fray are the Austrians and the Italians. The French have always had their underground monarchists. I mean, it's France.
Well, the British are doing everything they can to strangle theirs.
Yeah,
commit royal suicide.
Something's going on, and I think there's some sort of royal. You don't rebuild the Stadtschloss. You don't spend that.
Well, apparently you do.
Apparently you do.
Apparently you do. But can we get the Reichsbunker back too?
Who knows? While we're at it, why not?
There's actually an Italian company that wanted to rebuild Hitler's bunker, and then put a glass roof on it so people could walk over and see it. And the Germans didn't like that because
no.
There's some unpleasantness, some stuff that's gone on.
Something that happened back then.
There are some bad feelings,
bad memories.
And you talk about what we were talking about recruitment in America, recruitment in German army. How can you have an army without allowing them for patriotism? Why? No, it doesn't work.
Tino. Since we're talking about symbolism, years and years, and I blogged about this on the website, and I've talked about it. So I don't know if I've ever mentioned it with you, but somewhere around 2009, 2010, at the military tattoo in Ottawa, Canada. Okay, Ottawa. The Bundeswehr sent a Wachbataillon to Ottawa to participate in the tattoo. And there's a video of it. And they start out, and the leader, the baton carrier, gives the signal, and they all start walking backward as they're piping out that typical Prussian fife tune.
You mean this thing?
No, not that. That's not the right one. I'll show it to you. I'll send you the link.
Okay.
So they start out walking backwards, And right about the time that they get to a certain position, then the guy at the front raises his baton and they start belting out Preußen's Gloria, the old Prussian military march.
Uh-huh. Oh.
And the whole battalion parade steps. Tino, it's not just the initial kick that they do. They parade step through the whole thing. Folks, if you don't know what the parade step is, you call it the goose step. It's the parade. It's the parade step. Yeah. They do this through the whole thing, and the Canadians are, oh wow, this is cool. and I'm looking at this, and I'm thinking, boy, there's some real symbolism here, because they start out and they walk backwards. Yeah. And then at the point that they start the march, they parade step forward through the whole.
Very symbolic.
That's highly symbolic.
And
this is a Bundeswehr honor battalion doing this.
So what he's saying is we're going to get Kaliningrad the hard way back.
I don't know. It's just and I'm not begrudging the Germans to have their military traditions. The Nazis have nothing to do with any of that stuff. But I just find it very, very interesting.
Yeah, it is.
That you find this return of symbolism going on all over the place in subtle little ways that we're not seeing over here in this country at all. We're in a race to the bottom with all of this wokery stuff. Don't play any Sousa marches because he was not up to date and woke and enlightened.
I do like the term liberal Marxism. Isn't that what they're doing?
Yeah,
exactly. It's very fitting.
And it's also liberal fascism. Jonah Goldberg wrote his book called Liberal Fascism, which I recommend people to read because it's a very
liberal fascism. Yeah, that's what we're looking at. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we said, we live in interesting times.
Yes, very.
And I keep getting these hinted warnings from people, and this is very interesting. One suggested that I needed to remind people to do like the Boy Scouts and be prepared for things to come.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a very good time for everybody to start actually thinking about preparing for maybe the lights go out, maybe the food disappear, maybe things fall out of the sky one day. I don't think it's. I'm not saying UFOs are going to land. It's just that no.
Look, at the rate we're going, and the stupidity and dumbing down taking place, not to mention the quack scenes that they've forced pilots to take who are dropping like flies. And by the way, if you want some scary stuff, go listen to recent air traffic control conversations on YouTube. It will blow your mind. When you say things falling out of the sky, we're worse than the Banana Republic. And let me put it this way. I admire your courage for getting on an airplane and flying to Europe.
You know what? It's funny. That's what I hear. I was heard that a pilot from United said that with the ultra minority hiring, deliberate hiring, trying to get rid of white middle-aged pilots, he was not going to fly when he was done because he would simply be afraid to fly given the lack of training, education. Again, you get people who are not qualified because you have to fill your quota, and dudes die. You see the same thing in the military.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, if I were inclined to fly at all, I would not fly on an American carrier. Give me KLM or Lufthansa or Qantas or somebody, but not a woke American airline. No.
Well, I almost got into a fight with one of the Nazis on Lufthansa because he insisted I wear a mask, and I insisted I didn't. Nice blue-eyed, blonde-haired young man who said, "What did you say? Wait outside the plane." And I was like, all right, if I escalate this, I'm not getting on this plane, so I'll just shut up now. But yeah, no, he was a good Hitler Youth, he was. And I'm like, you fly to America, young man? We're going to meet at a bar sometime. And I complained to Lufthansa because he physically actually put his hand on me. And I'm like, okay, I need to make this flight, but we'll talk about this. And they didn't complain. So yeah, Lufthansa used to be great, but we did have a little talk about that at some point.
Oh, so they're getting they're not the friendly skies of Lufthansa anymore, huh?
No, well, last time I was coming back and I ended up on a Lufthansa flight again. And for some reason, I kept crawling around through all these European forest full of ticks. And I got bitten by 3 ticks in a matter of a month. And the last one I found when I was sitting on the plane, and I was just, oh, what's that? I'm like, oh crap, there's a tick here. So I went out to the stewardess and asked do you have a tweezer because I have a tick? And he's like looked at me like, what? It's like, no, it's just a thing. So I took it off, and then she was a very attractive stewardess. So I suggested she might, for the safety of all the other passengers, search me.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And she in turn looked at me and go like, yeah, we do that all the time. I'm like, okay, we have one humor. The male steward was probably the one who would have searched me if I asked. But
stop.
You can charm yourself to an upgrade on a seat. That's fine. Show a little skin and get a better window seat.
Stop.
But I saw we came full circle because I saw this morning the CDC put out a thing that people who got the vaccine are now in higher chance of getting COVID. So I saw this morning, and appropriately enough, I read the post while I was in the bathroom and go like, yep, this is the place for that kind of news.
Jeez.
It's, what are you going to do? But I just wish people really need to start educating themselves and asking questions, because a lot of the young ones, they don't know why they believe what they believe, and they have no idea why it's wrong. And it's very hard. There's a lot of young people that's going to wake up one day and realize that everything they thought was the foundation of their belief system is wrong. And that's hard. Sometimes the hard way is just the only way. And I'm afraid of what's coming.
I am too.
I thought I was going to die happily of old age, being 99 years old with a 19-year-old girlfriend. And now I'm afraid I'm going to end up fighting in a trench somewhere.
You can't have a country this insane.
No.
And expect a good outcome.
You really can't.
There are 2 things that you cannot deal with in any rational way, and they are invincible stupidity and evil. And these people are both. And that kind of individual only understands one language. And unfortunately, I think we're fast approaching the time that we're going to have to start speaking it one way or another, because this kind of incompetence cannot endure.
No.
Because if
you would certainly hope not. I'm afraid. I'm surprised it's gotten as far as it has. But if half of the population only listens to one side of news, a lot of them generally don't know, because they don't, and you don't have time. You have 3 kids, you have 2 jobs. You don't have time to dive into every statement you hear. And that's the problem. If you only listen to one side.
But the real problem is you don't need the entire population to force a change. You really only need about 3% of it. And that's where I think we are. I think, at some point it just gets to be too much and things will boil over. I definitely think at least the so-called red half of the country is at boil over stage. We have been for quite some time. Nuttyfornia is another matter. I don't know about you people out there. You got something in the water out there. I know.
Yeah, no kidding. It does, but only in the big cities, apparently. Because in the middle, everywhere else,
you don't have any water because they won't let you build any reservoirs. Hey, there we go.
One of the things that the Prigozhin run sort of, let's say hypothetically, he had gone on with his 20 or 40,000 highly trained mercenaries, went on, toppled the government in Moscow. it didn't seem that there was a whole lot of people interested in stopping him either way. There's not a lot of Russian civilians that really cared either way. And half the oligarchs jumped on their jets and fled town. I think for Russia, the symbol is that if you're going to start marching against your government or parts of your government, don't stop, because you may actually fall out of the sky later. What about, and I'm thinking, well, so we have a general, let's call him a general for the sake of he's commanding of troops, who went to the leadership because of the better welfare of his troops with 20 or 40,000 people. Somebody marching against their government for what's better for his country or his soldiers as he sees it. And it only took 20, 30,000. It might not, you're right, about the 3%. And you're right. And I think that's why we saw, interestingly enough, when you had the Klutz Biden's inauguration, those National Guard troops that was all posted there to keep his inauguration safe, from the ones I know who was there, was not issued ammunition.
I can believe it. Look, the Prigozhin thing, what that told me, the fact that they weren't encountering any opposition, really.
Yeah.
That told me that, first of all, this was not a coup attempt. And secondly, the Russians were not all that interested in getting rid of their government. In other words, what it told me was that the Russians are perfectly happy with Mr. Putin and the way he's been running things. They have their problems with him. They have their complaints about him. But for the most part, I think they're kind of okay with him for the moment. We'll see if that lasts. In the case of the so-called Fedsurrection in Swampington in 2021, and that's what I call it.
Yeah.
This was largely a staged event, or at least was provoked by agents provocateurs.
Yeah.
Within the crowd. But what it also tells me, the degree to which the swamp has acted like the Stasi, as you rightly point out, and imprisoned these people. What that tells me is they are dreadfully afraid of that scenario playing out in real time.
Yeah.
What they're dealing with is a Martin Luther King sized crowd, and all of them are armed.
Yeah.
And I don't care how many National Guard, state troopers, or police that you put on the streets. They cannot handle a mob like that. There's just no way.
And that's how we know this was not an insurrection, because
That's
if it
right.
had been,
If it had been
successful.
Yes, absolutely.
It's at that time it was so obvious this was staged. It almost, and just the very to prove that point, they don't want to release the footage. And when they finally do release a bit of the footage, Tucker Carlson gets fired for showing it.
Yeah.
If you have nothing to hide, then show what you have. You have 30,000 hours of footage. You don't want to show it, then you're hiding something. It's very simple.
Yeah.
And
this is what tells me that they are very fragile, that the government is very, very fragile, and that they are worried about this whole thing. We've been operating under continuity of government emergency since 9/11, and this is the other problem that people forget.
Yeah.
But I go back to the Bundy ranch business under Obama, when the federal government attempted with arms to shut down a rancher in Nevada.
Yeah.
And was met with, something they did not plan for or expect, I'm convinced, was the rancher and his family showing up with their arms, and the local Indian tribes and the local sheriff and everybody else showing up with their arms and saying no to the federal government. You're not doing this.
Yeah.
And this is going to keep happening.
Yeah.
I don't see any good way out unless the swamp backs down, and they can't back down because their power is at stake. It's at stake in the Ukraine. It's at stake at home. They're in a real mess.
And they have worked themselves so hard to appease their ultra extremists that now they can't. Even Schumer says, I don't like Schumer whatsoever.
I don't either.
But if you go back 20 years, Schumer wasn't this crazy.
No.
Well, none of the Democrats were this crazy 20 years ago. This is a completely different breed This is not the Democrat Party as your grandparents and parents
Oh,
knew it.
heavens, no.
I mean,
My mom
this
and dad
is
would not recognize this at
no.
all.
And I think that is the barrier that most people have to overcome is that, well, we voted this way because grandparents' dad did. No, now you're voting for Marxist fascists. You're not
Right.
voting for Democrats. Give up that thought.
Yeah, they're
And
gone.
and I don't know what we can do to fix the Republican Party, because they're just as much as fault for.
Oh, the Republicans are at fault for going along with all of this for so long.
Yeah.
I've told the people on my website many times that there's not two testicles in the same sack amid the whole Republican congressional delegation.
No,
You're dealing with people who have no spine and no balls.
Yeah.
They don't fight for anything. So yeah, this is not going to end well. The government has lost all contact with the vast majority of the people, and I don't care how efficient of a technocracy that you have, you can't run a country that way. The Soviet Union found out the hard way. They had one of the most efficient technocracies in the world, and it just fell apart. Won't work.
No, and hopefully it shouldn't. But again, if we keep pushing interesting false flags to get things done, but you're seeing Europe is now more and more, because of this war, swinging to the nationalists. And I keep saying there's nothing wrong with being nationalist, and then be proud of the country, be proud of where you're from, be proud Russian, be proud Ukrainian, be proud Norwegian, American, Danes, whatever. Be proud German, even if that's a scary thought for you. But be proud of your country and love your country and do what's best for your country, not what's best for the EU. That's an entity that doesn't love you. And we, on the other hand, who have always been the first ones to be proud Americans waving our flag, loving our country, are now taking a sideways road back to communist, Marxist.
Oh, it's absurd.
Un-American agenda.
It's absurd.
It is.
Totally
it is
absurd.
And when you have the last survey said the 51% of those leaving college do not think America is a great country, or was a great country.
Here's our problem in this country. We have a leadership class that, and it's true of Mr. Globaloney. Stalin called them rootless cosmopolitans. and for once the guy was right. Because our leadership class is all about process and policy and not about culture.
True.
And I'm sorry, you can only paper over the differences between a Frenchman and a German or an Italian or a Spaniard or a Dane or a Swede with paper and policy and process so long. Yeah. But sooner or later, that culture is going to come back and it's going to bite you in the ass if you don't know that that's what you're from. And this is what I think is happening in this country. This is why we're ungovernable.
Yeah.
They're trying all of this policy and ideology and process. And the plain fact of the matter is there is an American culture. And if you ignore it, you're going to have these kinds of problems. You can't ignore it any more than you can be a Muscovite living in Moscow and ignoring Russian culture. Can't be done. The Soviets tried it. It didn't work.
Nor should you ignore your culture. Everyone should.
Nor should you.
Culture.
Nor should you.
Absolutely. Otherwise, a bunch of mad Virginians are going to show up, led by a Prussian.
Well, I wasn't gonna talk about Lincoln's Marxists. By the way,
I was talking about Washington's Prussian.
Well, yes, Steuben, Count von Steuben, but no, it's interesting that Lincoln, took in a lot of Marxists into the Republican fold and into the Union Army. Go read about that phenomenon, because this was right after the 1848.
He also shut down 300 newspapers because they were not sympathetic for his cause. Which, gee, where have we seen that before?
Where have we seen that before? Yeah, not on my hero list, folks.
No, no. I'm not a big fan. I mean, Lincoln's, from my understanding, is that he could have stopped the Civil War months before, but he wanted his political cards played out so he got what he wanted.
He was a railroad lawyer. No, I'm very serious. He wanted the Union Pacific, not the Southern Pacific Transcontinental Railroad. That's bottom line here, folks. That's what all of this was about.
So what we need to get business out of politics. That's going to be an interesting.
Oh boy!
Yeah.
Don't get me started on the Philadelphia Constitutional Conventional coup d'état, because I'm an anti-federalist from the get-go. People know that about me, and Madison, Hamilton, that whole little oligarchs club. No, we got exactly what we ratified, folks.
Yeah.
And we were warned by Patrick Henry and Governor Clinton and Elbridge Gerry and all of those anti-federalists. That's what they're up to. Watch out. When I was growing up, Tino, I remember in junior high school being told the narrative about the American Constitution, that we needed to do this because the Articles of Confederation weren't strong enough to govern the country. And we needed to do that because we needed a strong defense. Now, wait a minute here, folks. We fought and won the Revolutionary War under the Articles of Confederation.
Yeah, it seemed to work quite well.
It seemed to work quite well. So, what about this narrative doesn't jive? It's a very different narrative.
Yeah.
They needed to monetize that debt and give us that central bank, and Hamilton wasted no time on that.
Speaking of central bank, isn't it this month that the Russians and Chinese and Iranians and I can't remember who it is running out their old gold back? There's new gold backed currency.
Okay, you know what? Since we're on that topic,
I figured you'd be the one to ask.
I'll tell you what went down here, and it was talk about rope-a-dope. And once again, we were the dope.
Wow.
Because there was beginning around midsummer, there was this consistent campaign, Tino, of we're gonna roll out the gold backed currency, and everybody's got to get ready because it's going to be the BRICS currency, and that's going to accelerate de-dollarization and blah blah blah. And I was watching this and I'm thinking, okay, what's the real game here? Well, I'll tell you what the real game was. When they held the summit in South Africa, they rolled out and announced the fact that BRICS had just accepted 6 new members. 6. One of them being, by the way, our dear old friend Argentina.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, nothing significant there.
No, nothing ever happened.
Just the largest economy in South America. And by the way, they make most of the electrical power for the rest of South America because good old Juan Perón didn't get rid of all of his nuclear reactors.
Smart
that
man.
The Nazis built for him. I'm flabbergasted. I saw that and I thought, oh, there it is. Now, what's going to happen? Here's my prediction, Tina. And I do think that the BRICS nations are serious about some form of gold-backed currency. But what I suspect is going to happen, you already have between several BRICS countries, Russia and India, India and Iran, India and Japan, which is not a BRICS nation, you already have these bilateral currency trading agreements.
Yeah.
That the Indians just bought lots of oil from Russia and they settled in rupees.
Ooh, did they then?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. And
the Germans didn't want it.
Well, exactly. They settled in rupees. So, as we're watching this happen, what's happening to the euro? It's tanking. Okay. The euro is not in good shape. But anyway, I'm watching this and I think what's going to happen, Tino, and I've been predicting this and for some time with Catherine Fitz, and she actually has kind of I wouldn't say strongly agreed with me, but she has agreed that it's a possibility. You're going to see regional reserve currencies emerge.
Yes.
And what's going to happen, I strongly suspect, is that the BRICS countries are going to, or pardon me, I should say already have units of account on the books. So let me explain what I mean. If we go back to Venice and the Venetian bankers on the Rialto, okay,
Mm-hmm.
they're trading in all of these different currencies all the time, every day. But on their ledgers, what they're doing is they're trading in a unit of account that is accepted among all the different banks. And they're basing all the exchange rates not on direct currency rates to each other, but those currencies are based on rates of exchange to that unit of account. Follow me?
Mm-hmm.
What the BRICS countries already have, I'm convinced, is an agreed upon unit of account. Otherwise, these bilateral currency agreements would not be taking place.
No.
So what I suspect the plan is they are going to back that unit of account with gold at some point. And that unit of account will then be what they use to clear the gold exchange between them.
Yes,
And
that's
the reason I say that is very significant, and it's something that most people don't even know happened because our wonderful lamestream propaganda media in this country never informed the American people of what just happened. I think it was 2 years ago, Japan and India concluded a logistical support agreement between their militaries.
Yes.
That if one or the other should, for whatever reason, come under attack from someone being unspecified here, they would logistically support the militaries of the other country. Tell me, Tino, how are they going to transact the financial clearing of that support? Especially when this is a bilateral agreement. Beijing not involved. Swampington, D.C. not involved. The only way they're going to be able to clear is through some sort of unit of account agreed upon by both countries, and that unit of account is going to stipulate some sort of par value for the rupee and the Japanese yen. That's how it's going to be done.
Yeah.
That's huge, folks. These are two of the largest economies in the world agreeing on a financial arrangement that is going to have to underpin any military logistical support that the two would lend each other. Any support. And no one, as far as I can tell, caught what had just happened. So I think that unit of account exists. I think they're using it already. I think Japan is part of that unit of account, although they're playing the Shinzo Abe game and not telling anybody, because the Japanese are very good at statecraft. Thank you very
much. I mean, you got old traditional politicians who's been in hereditary countries.
Japan. The Yakuza knows what they're doing, folks. And by the way, that's not their word for the mafia. It's much broader than that. This is not Japanese mafia. This is Ministry of Trade and Industry. This is Imperial Household. This is Mitsubishi. This is Suzuki and all of those old families in Japan. You better believe it is.
And incidentally, Japan has instituted a whole new rearmament and new development plan as well.
Oh, golly, I wonder why.
It's funny.
Could it be that the Japanese are a little worried about the stability of their erstwhile ally across the Pacific? Maybe, kind of, huh?
Well, we do have a problem recruiting, remember? We can't send all these people.
Listen, when Shinzo Abe was prime minister, the Japanese launched their latest aircraft carrier.
Oh, the one that's not really an aircraft carrier. It's a helicopter
It's a
carrier
helicopter.
cruiser.
Do you know what they named it?
Yes.
The Akagi.
Yes.
And I thought, oh, there's not a message there,
No,
folks.
I know. Oh God, I remember. It's like the Kuznetsov is also not an aircraft carrier.
It's not an aircraft carrier.
No,
It's not
not at all.
It's not named for any famous Russian generals either.
No, not at all. Not at all.
That happened to defeat the New World Order globalist of his day, but you know,
Akagi's only a cruiser.
it's only a cruiser.
Only a cruiser. It just happened to be just by accident. You can land F-35s on there, but
just by accident. Yes,
it's happened. It's just a coincidence.
And it's not named for any famous World War II Japanese aircraft carriers. Not at all.
No. And it also doesn't have any long-range offensive firepower at all, except helicopters. So it must be a cruiser.
It's purely defensive.
Yes.
I just thought, okay. You know, it's just like, oh God, can we wake up in this country, please?
It's funny, it's because everyone else slowly seems to be waking up one way or another, a little bit. Maybe, don't know about the Germans, but everyone else seems to sort of kind of getting the message.
I haven't been able to figure out Germany since the end of World War II.
I don't think Germany's been able to figure out.
Well, I don't think Germany's been able to figure out Germany, but you know, when they do figure it out, you know, look out, world.
I just think they missed the Kaiser.
Well, they do.
And van der Leyen and Schultz is not doing it for them.
No, I know that you say that in jest, but if you look back at the Wilhelmine Reich, it was a very well run. Say what you will about the three Kaisers. They had the good sense to rule when they had to, unlike a British monarch.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they also had the good sense to stay out of it when they had to. And, you know, Wilhelm II gets a bad rap, and I think a very undeserved one, because when he had to, he made some good decisions. He made some bad decisions, true. But he wasn't afraid to exercise the authority of his office. This is what I'm really getting to. And he knew better than to meddle when he shouldn't. For the most part, he was a much better ruler than people give him credit for. But in terms of the state itself, it was a well-run state. It really was. It took care of its people. It managed its affairs fairly well. It looked out for its national security in a good way, although some of the Kaiser's diplomacy skills left a lot to be desired. But for the most part, it was a well-run state.
But the thing, I think Germany have not been allowed to be Germany ever since World War One.
No, it hasn't. Yeah.
And another thing, there's just slowly the archives have finally given up enough papers that I really honestly do not think that we can blame World War One on Germany's soul.
Oh no.
That was a big pie where everybody gets a slice. But you cannot blame Germany solely on World War One. Austria, Russians, everybody.
If you're going to blame people, if you're going to blame one power in particular for World War One, on the surface it would be Austria-Hungary.
Yes.
And beneath the surface it would be Great Britain.
Yes.
But the rest of them, no. But this blame Germany thing, you know, that's problem number one. Problem number two is at the end of the war, you take the most powerful nation in Europe that's smack dab in the center of Europe, surrounded by other powerful nations, and tell it can't defend itself.
Yeah.
You know, that's, I'm sorry, folks, that boat doesn't float. And obviously it didn't for very long.
No. That's the problem. Ever since World War II, Germans have been told they're not allowed to be Germans, and everything that went wrong is all their fault. Yeah, now they're being made to pay mindset by for things their grandparents may have done.
No,
and you cannot. I remember van der Leyen. She banned the Panzerlied.
I know.
And this is like the politicians in Germany have no clue and they keep hammering their own, holding their own people down.
No, you cannot. You can't. For one thing, I'll tell you why I think you're right here, and that is the German custom of the Jagdfesten. You know, that they're held in German cities every year. And you look at these little community dues where they're having their festivals, and you see all these people playing their band music and marching up and down the street, and they're doing the parade step again.
Yeah.
You know, this is what Germans do. This is how Germans march. It has nothing to do with Nazis, folks.
No, way before that.
Displaying those regimental colors and all of that, this is like the British. So to say that you can't do that anymore, no. The other thing that we've been trying to do to Germany is to make it forget its Reformation Lutheran heritage. They have been pushing this I don't know what you'd call it, modernist global secularism on Germany for so long, and it's no wonder you end up with a schizophrenic population. Yeah. Because you're cutting them off from their history. That's what we're going to do here in this country.
Yes.
With every Confederate general that they take down in the name of wokery, you're going to produce a schizophrenic population.
Yeah.
That's not going to be able to understand American history, the good and bad things that happened in it.
True.
It can't be done. You know, it's just nuts.
And if you keep trying to make people pay for something that their great-great-grandparents may or may not have done without an honest discussion, you are going to create the things you blame them on.
Tino, I have on my website that there's a theological basis for that nonsensical view. And that view comes from the Western understanding of original sin. When you hear a modern Western Christian, be he Roman Catholic, Presbyterian, or American Southern Baptist evangelical, start talking about sin nature, what they're telling you is that you are born guilty.
Yes.
You are a child of wrath of Adam and Eve's sin. Now, folks, let me tell you, as an Eastern Orthodox Catholic Christian and a patristic scholar, that is not the original doctrine of the church.
It is not.
It is a Western corruption from St. Augustine of Hippo. What you inherit from Adam and Eve is death. You do not inherit a moral culpability for someone else's sin. And every time you hear a Democrat or a globalist or anybody talking about reparations, they're telling you to accept that doctrine in another guise.
Yes.
It is not part of the original Christian deposit of the faith. That's one reason I became Eastern Orthodox, folks. Well, that's one reason the West hates the East.
Well, Marxists aren't really traditional Christians, are they?
Well, look, people think I'm nuts when I say that the West hates orthodoxy, but it really does.
Yes.
Because you have two Europes, not one. And Western Europe wants to measure Eastern Europe by its own canonical status, which it assumes is true of itself. It's the other way around. It's Eastern Europe, which is the first Europe. It's Western Europe, which is the offshoot. People need to remember the Roman Empire survived until 1453.
Yeah.
The West thinks that the Roman Empire survived until 476.
Yeah.
So there's two different understandings of history going on here, folks, and it is deeply involved and bound up with this war going on in the Ukraine. It's the West that's behind fomenting this war. Remember that. We've said as much today. There's a reason for it, and it's deep.
And we're back to the understanding of history. Because if you have no understanding of history, or the misrepresentation of history,
yes,
we can now have an argument about when this country was founded and put under constitution. And again, we're back to, but it is a deliberate division that
Yes.
goes on everywhere.
Yes.
Well, you have to pit they're so easy to pit the races against each other. That's their easy thing. And then you can start building their genders against each other. And now you can have everybody hate everybody because then we're all busy fighting and we're not paying attention to the lunacy they're actually doing.
Look,
very standard.
Let's go back to Germany for a minute. And this idea that you're trying to cut the Germans off from their Reformation heritage, which I think is a crucial thing to understand. Why? Well, if you look at German history, who created modern German? Martin Luther. How did he do that? Translating the Bible into German. What did he do? What translation did he use? Jerome's Vulgate? No. He used the patriarchal Greek text. So when you look at Lutheranism, if you really want to understand Germany and why it has this kind of mystical element to it rather than this rationalistic, legal French Latin element to it, you have to understand that in doing that, Luther is also looking to, and you'll find most of the patristic scholars of that era are German, because they're looking to the Greek church fathers for their inspiration, not to St. Augustine of Hippo. So there's another huge connection here in the mix as to why Germany is always kind of caught in this. Well, we look to the east, we look to Russia, we look to the Ukraine, we look to all these farmlands to the east, and it's also looking to the west. It's kind of in the middle. Well, that being in the middle is literally part of its geographic position, but it's also a part of its cultural heritage from the Reformation, because Luther is doing that in the way he's trying to juggle two very different traditions. So, this is extremely important stuff here, folks. And they're trying to do that, as you pointed out, they're trying to do that to us in this country.
Yes.
They're trying to reduce our history to this binary choice that we've got to make. Well, number one, the choice isn't binary. And number two, I don't have to accept the fact that I have to make a choice according to someone else's binary dictate. No. They're trying to do it to us. It ain't going to work.
And the same thing is that there's been an utter war on religion.
Oh, absolutely.
Throughout the West.
Oh, absolutely. And totally.
Interestingly enough, they're not fighting that hard against the Muslim religion because they seem to be pissed off enough to fight back. But any Christian religion.
Well, there's that too.
There's that too. They get really annoyed. And I'm like,
when you tell them that you have to let your daughter use a man's bathroom or vice versa.
They get really annoyed with that, don't they?
Really annoyed with that.
They start fist fights and stuff. It's funny how, well, you got to get rid of religion because with that sort of mentality, we just can't tell people what to believe and that they don't believe it.
Yeah, well,
there was a time when Christians would actually, of all sorts, would actually stand up and fight for what they believed in.
Well,
but I guess that time is almost, well,
no,
this doesn't always come, but it's in the West.
What has happened is you've got to remember something. The churches were deliberate targets of the cultural Marxist agenda.
Yes.
There's a reason that the cultural breakup and crackup in the West can be dated to certain significant bellwether events. Number one is the late Enlightenment. I'm not talking the early Enlightenment with Leibniz and Newton and people. I'm talking the late one with Kant and Schopenhauer and people of that ilk. And then the second bellwether is Vatican II, when the Roman Catholic Church suddenly abandons centuries of its tradition to create an entirely new liturgy and put everything in the vernacular. Okay. Now, the Orthodox Church is fine with vernacular, but it's not fine with modernist vernacular. Okay.
It shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. But my point is that event dates the fact that you can look at the Roman Catholic Church and see a co-opted, infiltrated institution. And shortly after that, you find all the Protestant churches going down the same route, beginning with the Anglicans and the Episcopalians. So in other words, folks, the churches have there's not only a war on religion, but that war began in the churches and began with their infiltration.
Yes.
So just because a church hangs a sign out front that says Catholic or that says Episcopalian, do they teach Catholic doctrine or do they teach Episcopalian doctrine? And usually 9 times out of 10, you're going to find out that the answer is no.
I mean,
So,
when you start seeing Catholic bishops that are homosexual,
yeah,
and
sporting miters with the rainbow flag colors.
I'm not a Catholic, but I'm seeing the Catholic religion having an identity crisis.
Oh yeah,
and it's funny because the things they should have dealt with,
right,
they didn't, instead they claimed they started. It almost looks like, well, yes, there's some child abuse and stuff. We'll sweep that on the carpet. Yes, but we'll let people be gay and have abortions. It doesn't seem to be consistent with the belief system. They're actually
it's what they've done. What they've done, Tino, is they have put themselves in the position that thoroughly modern Millie has put the U.S. military in. You have people who are functionally apostate from the vocation and office in which they pretend to fill.
Yes.
And once you do that, what happens? Your recruits dry up. Or in the case of the modernist churches, the pews start emptying out. Yes. I guarantee you, if you had a Pius XII take the say of Peter tomorrow and return the Roman Catholic Church to its pre-Vatican II construct and institutions, those churches would be full again. Because people can tell when they are being fed a big steaming crock of bull hockey and hypocrisy, and they don't want anything to do with it. And that's true of the churches as much as it is of the military. I guarantee that. The traditionalist churches are doing just fine. You don't find many of them, but when you're lucky enough to find one, I've got a little traditional Episcopalian cathedral here in my hometown. No women's ordination, none of that nonsense that happened in the Episcopal Church, and that church is full.
Yeah.
That one's full.
And I think that's one of the things that scares, let's say, the globalists and the
absolutely.
Marxists. The Marxists are the same as the globalists. This is the same utopian idea. But the religion is their outright enemy because it puts something higher than their lack of belief.
It's not just that. It's something that has to do with the culture, and they're not about culture. They're about process, ideology, and policy.
And destruction of
past. Destruction. Yeah, so they will never be able to understand that, and that's why they want to get rid of it, because they can't understand it, they can't control it.
Yes, and it's interesting what they might do is end up pushing various religions who previously couldn't coexist together.
Well, that's what they're doing.
It is becoming a war against religion itself, denoting all different belief systems.
Yeah,
and for some people who believe, you're not just going to be able to pull the wool over their eyes and say, well, stop believing tomorrow. We can't apparently make the communists stop believing communism or Marxism. Right. Apparently.
Right.
And it's interesting because I always said we should take these liberal communists, give them a state, fence it in, let them run it, and let them see how fast they're going to starve and realize their system doesn't work.
And Tino, that state is called?
No. Fine, I'll move.
I did. I mean, look, I was out there not too far from where you live, and
really?
I was trying to help out my friend. I moved back here about 5-7 years ago. I'm a Midwestern. I'm a hack from South Dakota, and I got out to Nuttyfornia, and I thought there is something in the water here. These people are absolutely nuts.
Yeah, a little bit like New York.
Oh no, you're a lot like New York.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
I had to get out because it's just the atmosphere alone. I found it to be spiritually and culturally stifling. It just
can't we give them a different state, because it's kind of nice here by the ocean.
I know California is really pretty and so on.
Fence off San Francisco and up that stuff
we've
there.
Got oceans out here too, and we even have nice big lakes with things with things called fish in them.
Fish? Hey, I got fish that glow in the dark here, Joseph.
Yeah, I know you do.
I'm not kidding, unfortunately. Well,
well,
I am looking for the state where I could go to where I can shoot guns and ride Harleys all year round. So,
I would say your best bets are places like Wyoming or the Dakotas, Tennessee.
Yeah, I like ocean.
Well, then South Carolina, Florida, Mississippi, Texas, lots of ocean.
Yeah, it's a. Well, we'll find it because I swear at some point in time I can't keep paying the gas rate out here. It's ridiculous.
Oh, it's absurd. When you said
and it is ridiculous that I don't hear the outcry. Why are people not protesting? Why are there not demonstrations outside Newsom's house about the damn gas prices? Just saying.
Because it hasn't reached the state of inconvenience to most people. The moment it becomes inconvenient for normie norm, then you'll start to hear the outcry. But I think, to anybody who's half awake, I'm already lividly mad. I am, Tino. I don't, I've got an interview coming up with Catherine Fitz, and she wants me to go back to doing our report card on the political candidates.
Oy, oy.
And I'm like, I'm in that frame of mind, Tino. A pox on all of your houses. May you break out with leprosy or something. I look at all of them. I can't stand any of them for one reason or another. I even have massive problems with Trump for his support of the quaccination business.
Yeah, he need to walk away from that seriously.
Well, he's trying to walk away from it now by saying, you need just to come out and say, I was wrong, I apologize, and get it behind you fast.
Now, one thing
the rest of them, Pence?
Oh, please.
You're not my concern. Really?
Or that other schmuck from New Jersey.
Chris Christie.
Yes, I mean.
We've got Chris Christie, Mike Pence, the Hindu, the lady that thinks she's Miss Conservative Warmonger, I forget her name, from South Carolina, Nikki Haley.
Yeah.
Who are these people? The only one that is coming close to a shred of sense, believe it or not, I think is Bobby Kennedy Jr.
Yeah.
And even he's got some real clunkers.
He actually works out at my gym.
Oh, he does. Well, say hi if you ever see him.
I will. I mean, I was in Ukraine. When I left for Ukraine, what's his name? DeSantis was the rising star and contended to the throne. And then I came back and everybody says, oh, it's over for him. What happened?
Well, I'll tell you what happened. I can tell you in a nutshell. I was actually very favorably disposed towards him earlier this year. And then the news started to trickle out that he had met with people that I could identify with a certain family of shrubbery that I loathe and detest more than I loathe and detest the Clintons. The moment that's real bad.
That's very bad.
That's very bad, because the moment I heard that he had talked to any of the shrubbery, I ain't going there. And you can date his collapse in the polls from the beginning of his consort with the rhino donor class. That's what happened to him.
That's not exactly.
He started to listen to the Karl Roves and the Jeb Bushes and that whole ilk. And I'm sorry, we've had enough of you people. Go to California. give
Yes,
Tino
that's what we need, more of them.
Yeah, give Tino a reason to leave that awful state.
What a paid radio gig in a warm state.
Well, look. I mean, look at who's running your state right now. Gavin Newsom. I mean,
yeah, I know. So I mean, I'm still thinking that Gruesome Newsom is going to. There's a possibility he will run. He's got a campaign staff set up, and I'm
I know he does.
running or not. I mean, is Biden all? Is it official that Biden is dead?
Look,
or
here's what I think is going to happen. Since we're on the topic of Biden Joe and his wonderful family.
Good people. Salt of the earth.
They're all such good people. Down to earth.
Meth of the earth.
Yeah, meth of the earth.
Meth of the earth.
I think what they're going to do is they're going to prolong him as long as they can, and then wait for the Trump trials to take place.
You mean till the corpse starts smelling? And
at the last minute, they're
sorry.
I'm doing my best to ignore this, folks.
He's been dead for years, man.
He's been dead for years. Yes.
Okay.
Boy.
Go on.
Time to change them diapers. I gotta tell you.
Febreze. Not just for room deodorizer. You got that dead politician banging up your living room. Febreze.
No, I think they're gonna preserve him as long as they can. It's going to be a weekend at Bernie's type deal if he dies. You know, they're literally going to prop him up and
they can't give it to her.
No. What's going to happen is they're going to prop him up as long as possible, and then at the last minute they're going to have him resign. They'll force Kamala out, and they'll give us somebody that no one expects. And I strongly suspect it will be a woman. I'm not thinking Hillary Clinton. You know, they're not going to try that.
Oh, you said a woman.
Yeah, a woman.
So obviously not Hillary Clinton.
Well, obviously not Hillary Clinton. Yes, we know about her, but no, I think they're going to. They've got to pull something fast and dramatic to save the brand, because the Democratic brand is failing at an amazingly fast rate. It's just not playing anymore.
But wouldn't it be Newsom? Wouldn't that be the obvious? I mean, is it obvious because everybody thinks it's obvious?
Well, he can have a sex change operation between now and then, and I wouldn't put it past him or them to do something nutty like that. And now I'm trans. I literally think they're that nuts.
I love the fact that Newsom's in-laws moved to Texas and donated to Trump.
I know.
That sort of tells you. That must be Thanksgiving, must just be a hoot.
Well, I mean, look at Nancy Pelosi. She moved to Florida.
She did?
Yeah.
Oh, she's out of my. Oh,
she bought a house in Florida. She doesn't even want to stay around her husband. Not that you can blame her.
I mean, yeah, that's funny. What that thing just went away.
Scoop that right off the table.
And of course, Feinstein doesn't know where she is at any given moment, so that doesn't really matter.
You know, every time I think of Joe Biden, Dianne Feinstein, Mitch McConnell. You know, this whole gerontocracy class, all I can see is the May Day parade in the Soviet Union with all those old geezers up on Lenin's tomb, barely able to lift their hands. That's where we are, and this is the other problem. You're dealing with a political class that is so clinging to power as they age and become senescent. They can't run anything.
Exactly. The people you want in office are the people who doesn't want to be in office, but takes it on as a duty for 4 or 8 years to fix the problem, then goes home, like the Roman general when Hannibal invaded.
Yeah. Right. At least Vivek Ramaswamy and Bobby Kennedy Jr. are articulate. They can actually form a sentence and articulate a complete thought.
For a politician? Well,
yeah.
I don't know if we can have that kind of intellectualism, Joseph.
That
may not work for the voters.
Can't have that around here.
You're talking full sense. You enunciate? What the hell?
Oh, we don't want that. We need people that mispronunciate their words.
Hey, I think we're insulting my fan base. Stop it. God, I'm sorry. I love the South. But the funny thing about the South is they can make fun of themselves, which is something that Democrat, Hollywood, LA, they can't.
Look, I've lived in the South for most of my adult life, and I prefer it. And I never, when I was growing up, I never thought I would say that. But the reason I do is there was something about the South, particularly in the in the antebellum years.
Yeah.
Even during the monstrosity of slavery, there was something about the South that was unique and different and very good. And no one can quite pin it down. What was that? We think of slavery and the abomination that institution was and is, but nonetheless, there was a real there was some sort of sense of honor and duty and patrimony, or as you call it, patriotism, in the South that was just sort of part of the fabric. Be you freeman or slave, there was something about the fabric of that society that was very, very different.
Very true. And there's still remnants of that.
There are.
You can look people in the eyes and shake your hand, and you can actually keep the word, which is something that will be almost unthinkable around here for people. It's simple thing: show up on time, do what you say you're going to do. I mean, I know.
Punctuality is what happened to this. I was raised, Tino, to be on time, if not a little early, to everything. That was the way I was raised.
Yeah.
You never kept people waiting.
No.
And if you passed a certain amount of time, you gave them a phone call.
Yes.
Something to let them know.
Yes, most certainly.
I cannot believe the complete lack of punctuality that Americans have now.
There's no sense of this.
No, there is none at all.
And I'm actually at the point where I think we need to institute conscription for a year to at least install in the next generation some life skills they can use and some discipline instead of, you can't live a life having taken a college degree in transgender harmonica repair. You actually need to learn how to do stuff. I think,
oh God, I've got to get that image out of my head.
What I'm saying is,
that's awful. I've got this image in my head of a very obese trans person with purple and pink hair, with a face that makeup has been spackled on with a putty knife, trying to play a harmonica. Oh God. I'm sorry, folks. Every now and then something just tickles my funny bone and I can't get the image out of my head.
All right. Let me bring us back to normal for a minute. Just for a second. All right. Everybody reset.
Everybody reset.
You feel better now? Good.
There's not a harmonica stuck between those things.
No, I think she is an actual woman by every definition.
She's an actual woman.
That's what I searched for. So, I don't know what I'm going to get these days.
God, it's so ridiculous. We're going to have to start DNA testing people to find out which bathroom they're going to have to use. I like I said, I have of course I have friends that are gay. Actually, a couple of bikers that are gay, big bodybuilding guys with beards, and they were complaining. We talked about it at the gym a couple of months ago, and I was like,
And she's like, I don't get all this. They're both conservatives. And they're like, we have a problem now as we've been gay. They've been married for 20 years. It's like, our problem is now that because we don't want to chop our penises off, we're not gay enough. And I'm like, gee, I don't know what to say, Sam. It's like, I guess everybody has problems. It's like, how marginalized can you marginalize marginalizers?
Well, folks, there it is right there. Proof that this country is completely insane. You've got to chop off your penis to prove that you're gay.
Which I think theoretically
that you're a gay man. No less.
Wouldn't that make you like not gay if you? Then you, I mean, one of them would then have to.
No, I lost track several genders ago.
I mean, come on, there's only 32 of them.
Oh God, it hurts.
I mean, just remember, we live in a country where we have a Supreme Court justice who can't define what a woman is.
Oh, I know.
Just remember that. We are in good hands.
Yes, we are.
For everything else, there's Kamala Harris.
Oh, God.
And they wonder why the aliens don't come to Earth and land. They're sitting on the dark side behind the moon with the Nazis going like, I ain't going down there. Back in the day, it was us that used to do the probing.
We can't take you to our leader, sir, because we don't have any.
We're a collective community.
we're like sort of like like just into love and friendship and stuff. Oh God!
I see two aliens in a spaceship going like, "You want to go down there?" Like, no. Last time I went down there, they want to turn me into a woman. We used to do the probing around here. What happened, Bob?
What happened?
Did we probe them too much? I want to see the CIA files on that.
Tino, you've got to testify to Congress.
I loved it.
We used to do the probing around here. Oh God, I'm gonna hurt for the rest of the day.
I mean,
oh God!
You think you might get picked up by aliens, and then you just find out it's the ACLU. It's what we do instead of shaking hands now.
Oh God, that there's an image for you, folks. The ACLU has their own saucer technology, and they're going to go around the galaxy enforcing it.
We are going to flee to those FEMA camps.
Yes.
Like, no, let me in. I don't want to be out here anymore.
I don't want to be out here anymore. Oh God. Well, Tino, you've certainly set a new low.
Good. I can run for office then, is what you're saying.
Oh God, don't do that. And if you do, stay there in Nutty Fornia.
I mean, I would run for Kaiser or something.
Oh God. Oh, I gotta breathe. I need some oxygen. That was too much.
You want me to pull out the picture of the girl again?
No, that's okay. I'm still getting over. We used to do the probing around here. That picture will just make me think of it all the more. God. Oh my. I'm gonna have to tell that one to Whitley Streamer next time I talk to him.
Give it my best.
I will.
I just looked up transgender harmonica repair. Apparently nothing comes up, so it's not a thing yet.
Well, There you go. You found your niche, Tino.
I'll start teaching the class right away. I hear Yale and Harvard are open to these things.
Yeah, they probably are.
You'll hear Stanford announce it tomorrow. Ooh, we haven't done that.
Oh, God. It's too good. It's too good.
Well, then.
Yes, there's nothing like a good laugh.
I mean, what else can you do? Meth? We're in California. What else are you going to do?
Oh, God. I want you to know that for the rest of today, and probably as I settle to sleep tonight, I'm going to have visions of ACLU flying saucers with transgendered harmonica repair service persons coming to Earth and complaining that they used to do all the probing. You managed to create a kaleidoscope of images.
I would think I might be getting drawings soon from people here. I will share what I get. I know that we have some fairly autistic people here.
Well, if you do, please share them with me.
Oh, I will. I will.
Well, that's one for Congress. Yes, we used to do the probing around here.
I'm pretty sure the various agencies we have in Washington is doing far more probing on the aliens ever did at this point.
I don't know. Anyway, well, yes. Okay, little girl, just a minute. We're almost done. My little girl is saying, "Take me outside." Hello. Oh, yes. Yeah.
There you go. Here's your sign.
She makes a lot of more sense. Yes, we will.
There you go.
Just a minute, little girl. Yeah,
hey.
You lay down. Just a minute.
If it wasn't for dogs, what would we do?
Oh, she's been such a sweetie. Yeah. As you can tell, she's a very talkative dog.
As she should be. Mine would only snore. You were talking to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, we will. Just a minute.
How's the weather been out there?
Actually, this year has been just a nightmare because we had that bad storm in June. Literally, Tino, it was a straight line wind storm with winds that were on a front as broad as the entire width of the county.
Ew.
And in excess of 120 miles an hour.
Did you get that tree sorted?
I did get the tree cut down. This neighborhood, you would not have believed the trees that it uprooted. And Shiloh and I were in the storm shelter for an hour and a half. It was the closest thing I've ever been in to a hurricane because the roar of the wind and the electrical storm that accompanied it was just off the charts of anything I've ever seen ever in my life. And for this part of the country, that's something.
Yeah.
And then 2 days later, another storm of the same nature, about 50 miles north of the track that the first one followed. And it was a straight west to east track. It was not like storms normally do, moving southwest to northeast. It was straight west to east and followed more or less parallel to the state line. Just very weird stuff. And then following that, when we had rain move in after those storms, they were moving northwest to southeast. I mean, it's just been nutty, just absolutely nutty. For this area of the country, those kinds of storms are not very common at all. And I know it's been nutty out there to a certain extent.
Yeah, we had this interesting, they were all up in arms and about this little weather bit of thing, bit of rain we had, and then we had an earthquake in the middle of it. And honestly, I was writing at the time. I didn't stop writing during the earthquake, didn't stop writing during the storm. So, I mean, I grew up in Scandinavia. You call this weather?
Well, yeah.
But you know, it's all because we drive cars and eat dead cows, Joseph. It's all that global warming thing.
Thank you, Greta.
Did you see she got arrested in Germany? And
well, good.
The protest. Yeah, I know, really. But that's probably good. In Germany, they have a cool name for those idiots who glue themselves to the roads now. Klimakleber.
That's good.
And I'm just saying, if you glue yourself to the road whereupon I drive, you become a speed bump. I'm sorry, but I got to go places. Yeah. I don't know what is wrong with these people. It's
I don't know. I mean, the nuttery is so off the charts, and like I say, when you get to that stage of irrationality, there's only one language you understand. You know, when we were kids, we were told sometimes by our parents, do it that way because I said so. And we're dealing with that kind of mentality.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to start talking that kind of language to these people, because there is no reasoning with complete irrationality. No, it's high time we quit pretending that there is.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. But all right, my friend, you have to take puppy dog out.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me back, Tino, and thank you for the wonderful imagery.
I'll see what I can come up with for next time.
All right, yeah, you do that. I want to see you top this. All right, take it easy.
You say hi to everybody, and
I will.
I puppy dog. Yeah. All right, everybody. It was. I'm sorry I didn't really pay much attention on the chat, but holy hell! Thank you, Pepe. Because we've been talking, and I really only have a couple of cells to deal with, so keeping up with Joseph is all I can do to.
I didn't pay any attention to the chat either, so send me the link to your show so that I can look at what they were saying in the chat, because I wasn't paying any attention either.
Do you want to download so you can upload it on your own?
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
I'll send it, and you're GizaDeathStar.com, right?
Right.
Right. Yeah. Just throwing it out there. Don't remember what my website is, but
and two new books are out too. So
2 new books. Plug your books, for the love of
God. Giza Death Star Revisited just came out earlier this year, and then there's a kind of a sequel to that called The Demon in the Acre, which just came out. So 2 books are out.
Are they on your website, or?
They are on the website, yeah.
Outstanding. All right, everybody. Thank you, everybody. Thank you much. And don't remember, on Sunday, the revisited first episode of Last Nazi Secret starts. That's why I need. Cool. That's why I revisited it. I re-edited it with all the pictures of places we've been, and a photo of you still remains the same because, well, I don't have any other.
I don't take pictures. I'm
that's my job. We'll fix that. Go take the puppy out, brother.
All right, take it easy.
Everybody, take care. Bye. I'll see you all soon.